Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Ryan Poston. Ryan Poston was born on December 30th, 1982, in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, to parents Lisa Carter and Jay Poston. He had a close and loving relationship with his three sisters, Allison, Catherine, and Elizabeth. Ryan spent a significant portion of his teenage years traveling and studying abroad, attending schools in both Switzerland and the Philippines. Ryan was known for his adventurous nature, exceptional physical appearance, and charismatic personality, made him a standout among his peers. After high school, he attended Indiana University, where he majored in political science, history, and geography. Ryan graduated with honors in 2005. Following his family's tradition, Ryan decided to pursue a career in law. He enrolled in the Salmon P. Chase College of Law at Northern Kentucky University. Ryan had a profound respect for the legal profession, inspired by his grandfather and uncle, who were both attorneys. He had ambitious goals, one of which is the dream of owning a law firm. For the time being, Ryan worked in Cincinnati, Ohio, where he dedicated himself to offering affordable legal services to individuals who could not afford higher-priced attorneys. Although still young, Ryan had already built a considerable reputation. He attracted many clients seeking his advice and guidance. He worked diligently to ensure that everyone, regardless of their financial situation, had access to fair and competent legal representation. In 2011, Ryan has been through a painful breakup. He often visited his cousin Carissa in Lexington, Kentucky, seeking comfort and support. On one of these visits, his life underwent a dramatic change after an encounter with Shayna Hubers. Originally from Lexington, Kentucky, Shayna was a Southern and is the epitome of a true Southern girl, known for her extroverted and sociable personality. Her warmth and charm drew people to her. After graduating from high school in 2009 with a full scholarship, she studied psychology at the University of Kentucky. She then pursued her master's degree in psychology at Eastern Kentucky University. Despite their age gap, Ryan, 29, and Shayna, 21, couldn't deny their strong feelings for each other. Whenever Ryan visited his cousin Carissa in Lexington, he ended up spending more time with Shayna, and their connection deepened. As their relationship grew, Shayna began to spend most of her weekends in Highland Heights, Kentucky, where Ryan lived. She'd pack her bags, head to his home, and take care of him, cooking and cleaning for him. As time passed, their feelings grew deeper and deeper. Ryan introduced Shayna to his parents. She couldn't hide her excitement from her friends, raving about Ryan, and shares her dream of becoming Ryan's wife. However, the promising future of Ryan and Shayna came to a tragic end on October 12, 2012. On that day, Shayna called the authorities and reported that she had just killed her boyfriend, Ryan. According to Shayna, the incident began when Ryan attempted to physically abuse her. He allegedly dragged her out of the house when she tried to collect her belongings, and he confronted her with a gun. The situation became very tense and turned into a violent brawl, during which Shayna gained control of the firearm. Feeling intimidated by Ryan's, she panicked and pulled the trigger, shooting him. Believing Ryan was fatally wounded and wanting to end his suffering, she shot him several more times. Shayna believed Ryan's death was inevitable, so she wanted to end his suffering. After the shooting, Shayna placed the gun on a bookshelf and called 911 to report the incident. When officers arrived, they requested her to exit the apartment with her hands raised. Despite initial hesitation, but she complied, following the officers' instructions to lie face down on the ground. Throughout that time, Shayna appeared visibly upset. After handcuffing Shayna and placing her in the patrol vehicle, the officers entered the apartment. Inside, they found Ryan Poston dead on the dining room floor, covered in blood. Investigators then arrived and surveyed Ryan's condo. The condo appeared somewhat messy, but not unusually so for a 29-year-old man. Further investigation revealed that Ryan had a permit to carry a concealed weapon and owned firearms. The gun used by Shayna to shoot Ryan was identified as his own Sig Sauer semi-automatic pistol. Based on evidence from the apartment, investigators concluded Ryan was sitting at the table when Shayna started shooting. Blood on the table confirmed this. However, several items on the dining table were untouched, contradicting Shayna's account of a struggle. Typically, a fight would have knocked these items out of place. Investigators thoroughly examined Ryan's apartment for clues. Simultaneously, officers went door to door in the neighborhood to gather more information from Ryan's neighbors. A neighbor named Nikki provided valuable information to the detective. She knows Shayna well and feels Shayna is more responsible for the relationship than Ryan. Nikki reported that the couple often had loud arguments that disturbed the neighborhood. Months earlier, Shayna had visited Nikki, crying and expressing her fear of Ryan. Shayna claimed that a violent altercation with Ryan had left her injured, and he threw her down the hallway. Nikki believed Shayna's story and urged her to report the incident to the police. However, Shayna decided not to do that. When Shayna was at the police station, detectives interviewed her about the shooting of boyfriend Ryan. Before they started the questioning, the officers told Shayna her rights, which informed her that she had the right to a lawyer. Shayna asked for a lawyer, so the questioning was put on hold. While she waited in the interrogation room, she filled out some paperwork, under the supervision of a detective. Shayna chose to speak with the detective despite asking for an attorney. When asked the name of the victim, Shayna showed no emotion, simply stating the man she killed, clearly referring to her long-term boyfriend, Ryan. During the interrogation, Shayna explained that she acted in self-defense. She claimed Ryan had physically attacked her, grabbing her throat and throwing her around their apartment. During a break in the interrogation, the detective stepped out of the room and another officer took over. Shayna then shared new information with the officer about her confrontation with Ryan. She stated that before the shooting, Ryan said mean and unpleasant things to her, calling her unhinged and taunting her while holding a gun. Shayna attributed Ryan's violent behavior that night to being under the influence of substances. She maintained her account of the incident leading up to the shooting, claiming Ryan was sitting at the dining table handling ammunition for his pistol. She caught him staring at her from across the table and believed this was a sign that he intended to kick her out of his condo. Shayna admitted to seizing the opportunity to grab the gun and shoot Ryan. In the midst of chaos, Shayna fired one shot at Ryan, hitting him. Shayna initially thought she needed to end his suffering, as he was twitching after the first shot, and proceeded to fire several more shots, ultimately resulting in Ryan's death. Shayna revealed in her confession that Ryan was self-conscious about his appearance, especially his nose, and had previously expressed a desire to get a nose job. With this knowledge, Shayna intentionally shot Ryan in the face, claiming she was granting his wish. Throughout the interrogation, Shayna revealed that she was worried her relationship would be affected if people found out her boyfriend was dead. Specifically, she feared that no one would want to marry her if they knew she had killed her boyfriend, even if it was in self-defense. After hearing her out, the detective arrested Shayna and charged her with Ryan's murder. Shayna appeared to be surprised by her arrest, insisting that she had only shot Ryan to protect herself, and apparently expecting a different outcome. In 2015, Shayna's trial started, and the courtroom was filled with anticipation. The prosecutor began by comparing Shayna to Jodi Arias, another woman who had been accused of murdering her boyfriend, Travis Alexander. The similarities between the two cases were striking. This comparison increased the tension in the courtroom as everyone waited to see what would happen. The prosecutor argued that Shayna was fixated on her boyfriend, Ryan, and that he was all she could think about. According to the prosecution, Shayna's conversations were dominated by talk of Ryan. During the trial, the prosecutor presented a narrative of Ryan's intentions based on his friends' accounts. According to them, Ryan planned to end his relationship with Shayna and intentionally avoid her phone calls and texts. Despite these things, Shayna continued to show up at his condo in Highland Heights uninvited. The prosecution presented evidence that Ryan had plans to meet Audrey Bolt, the 2012 Miss Ohio, for a date on the night of the murder. This new information supported the prosecution's theory that Shayna was motivated by jealousy and anger towards Ryan's new relationship. Audrey testified that she had arranged to meet Ryan for drinks at a bar that night and waited for him, but he never arrived. It was only later that she discovered he had been shot and killed. During Shayna's trial, the prosecution showed the jury evidence that Ryan had often expressed his wish to end their relationship. Shortly before his death, Ryan called his father, Jay, for advice on how to handle the situation. Jay told Ryan to be kind to Shayna to avoid an ugly breakup. Despite Ryan wanting to break up with Shayna peacefully, but she continued to manipulate he. On the day of Ryan's death, evidence showed that he spent a lot of time texting with Shayna. In these texts, Ryan clearly told her that he didn't want to see her that weekend because he had other plans. Nevertheless, Shayna showed up at his condo uninvited, which was a common occurrence. The prosecution argued that during the argument, Ryan told Shayna it was over and she could no longer control him. This enraged Shayna, who then shot Ryan in a fit of rage. In trial, the prosecution played a video of Shayna's interrogation to show the jury that she was a cold-blooded killer. The video showed Shayna dancing and singing, seemingly unaffected by the departure of her boyfriend, Ryan. After killing a loved one in self-defense, most people would be extremely upset, crying and overwhelmed by what they had done. By showing the video, the prosecution argued that Shayna was a very emotionless person and did not feel remorse for what she did, implying that she didn't act like someone who had killed in self-defense. However, this explanation is not objective and depends on the jury's perspective. The interrogation video was a key piece of evidence in the prosecution's case against Shayna. However, it was not the only evidence presented during the trial. Shayna's defense team stuck to a consistent story throughout the trial. They claimed that Ryan was the one who behaved erratically and violently on the night of the incident, which ultimately led to Shayna shooting him. To support this claim, the defense team described Ryan's state of mind. They alleged that the combination of medications he was taking, including anti-anxiety medication and amphetamines, is the cause. To strengthen their argument, Shayna's attorneys presented autopsy results to the jury, prove that Ryan was using these drugs at the time of his death. This evidence suggested that Ryan's actions may have been influenced by the medications he is taking. The defense also called an expert toxicologist to testify that combining anti-anxiety medication and amphetamines could lead to violent and paranoid behavior. The goal of this testimony was to create a plausible explanation for Shayna's actions and then prove that she killed Ryan in self-defense. During Shayna's trial in April 2015, the prosecution was concerned that she would be acquitted because she was an intelligent, young, and beautiful woman. They worried that her self-defense claims might sway the jury. However, on April 23, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, convicting Shayna Michelle Hubers of murdering her boyfriend, Ryan Poston. At the sentencing hearing in August 2015, Shayna continued to blame Ryan for his death, which outraged his friends and family. Despite the evidence presented during the trial, Shayna maintained her innocence and refused to take responsibility for her actions. In Kentucky, a defendant who is a victim of domestic violence may be eligible for parole after serving 20% of their sentence. However, the judge did not grant Shayna this reduced parole, citing that she had committed a premeditated murder. Shayna was sentenced to 40 years in prison and will be eligible for parole in 17 years, in 2032, when she is 41 years old. Shayna appealed her sentence and was granted a new trial in August 2016. The appeal was granted because one of the jurors had a felony conviction, which is against Kentucky law, as felons are not allowed to serve on juries. In August 2018, after a 4-month delay, Shayna's second trial began. During opening arguments, Shayna's defense attorney stated that she had made every effort to please Ryan for the entire time they were together, a year and a half. But in the end, their love story encountered problems. According to the defense team, on the first night Shayna and Ryan met, he committed physical and sexual violence against her. This incident had a profound and lasting effect on Shayna, causing her to take several weeks to respond to Ryan's messages afterward. The defense claimed that Shayna's history of trauma began in high school when she was sexually assaulted. This led to her struggling with alcohol addiction and sexual promiscuity for many years. Her defense team argued that this traumatic experience significantly influenced her behavior on the night of the murder. The defense strategy aimed to create a sympathetic of Shayna by sharing her troubled past. They sought to prove that Shayna was not fully in control of her actions on the night of the murder. The defense hoped to show that Shayna's behavior was the result of a mix of factors. These factors included her history of abuse and her toxic relationship with Ryan. The goal was to show that Shayna was a victim of domestic violence at the hands of Ryan, rather than a cold-blooded killer. The defense argued that Shayna's actions were not driven by a desire for revenge or financial gain. Instead, they were the result of years of abuse she suffered at the hands of Ryan. Shayna's defense attorney argued that Ryan's constant criticism about her weight and chest size, as well as his pressure on her to get breast enlargement, significantly affected her self-esteem. The defense claimed that this criticism, along with the strain in their sexual relationship, contributed to Shayna's feelings of inadequacy. The defense presented evidence that Shayna had sought medical help to improve their romantic life, getting an injection to address their sexual difficulties. However, Ryan's rejection and lack of interest made the problems in their relationship worse, leaving Shayna feeling frustrated and isolated. Additionally, the defense alleged that Ryan would often end things with Shayna and then talk to other women, further straining the problems in their relationship. During their opening statement, the prosecution told the jury that they wouldn't portray Ryan as a perfect boyfriend. However, they made it clear that he wasn't abusive. They claimed that Shayna shot and killed Ryan not in self-defense. The prosecution alleged that Shayna shot Ryan because he had ended their relationship on the night of the incident. Ryan had decided it was time to break up with Shayna because she would not leave him alone. According to the prosecution, Shayna's repeated returns to Ryan after he ended things demonstrated her inability to move on from the relationship. During the trial, the prosecution showed text messages from Shayna to her friends. These messages stated that the intimate activities between Shayna and Ryan had strengthened their relationship. However, when Shayna took the stand in her own defense during her second trial, she disagreed. She claimed that these activities had actually pushed them further apart. In another set of text messages, Shayna had asked to have sex, but Ryan was taking antidepressants. The medication's side effects had reduced his sex drive. However, when Shayna testified, she alleged that Ryan had forced her into having sex. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted Shayna Hubers of murdering Ryan Poston for the second time. Despite conflicting testimonies and evidence, they upheld their initial verdict. During the sentencing hearing, Shayna's mother emotionally shared her daughter's singing talent and how it earned her multiple college scholarships. Choked with emotion, she asked the jury to consider the possibility of parole for Shayna. However, she acknowledged this didn't lessen the grief and suffering that Ryan's family was experiencing. Shayna Hubers was sentenced to life in prison without parole. She must serve at least 17 years before being considered for parole in 2032. She is serving her sentence at the Kentucky Correctional Institute for Women in Pewee Valley, Kentucky. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Diane Holick. Diane Tammy Holick was born in 1958 in New York City and was known to her friends and family as a hardworking and joyful person. Her work ethic led to financial stability and her successful career. For over 20 years, she worked at IBM, a leading global technology company. In 1996, she relocated to Austin, Texas, where she held a senior position that allowed her to work remotely from her home office. Diane purchased a luxurious home in the suburbs of Austin and lived a privileged life, often hosting wine tastings, dining at upscale restaurants, and frequenting dance clubs. She was also involved in charity work and made efforts to improve her personal life. However, her life took a turn in mid-November 2001 when a severe storm warning was issued for Texas, bringing heavy rain and tornadoes to the Austin area. As a result, Diane worked from home on the morning of November 16th, but suddenly became unresponsive during a scheduled work call. Diane had multiple phones, but she wasn't answering any of them. Her co-workers left messages asking her to call back, but when she didn't respond, they grew concerned. They contacted the police department and requested that someone check on Diane at her home. When the officers arrived, Diane's neighbor offered a spare key, allowing the police to enter the house. Inside, they found an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of dogs emerging from the kitchen. As the police searched the house, they found Diane's body in the bedroom on the second floor. The detectives were called to the scene, and they were struck by the unusual cleanliness of the crime scene. There were no signs of theft, struggle, or forced entry. Diane's body was fully dressed and lying next to her bed. The detectives quickly realized that they were dealing with a crime. The investigation revealed distinct strangulation marks on Diane's neck, likely caused by a rope or similar object. Her wrists also showed signs of being bound with cable ties. The cleanliness of the house, the lack of stolen valuables, and the absence of forced entry led the detectives to believe that Diane's killer was someone she knew and trusted. They suspected that the killer was someone she had let into her home voluntarily. An investigation into Diane's death revealed no signs of forced intimacy, but detectives did find suspicious dark spots and red stains on the carpet near the bedroom entrance. A towel on the back of the sofa in the living room caught their attention due to its mismatch with the otherwise clean and orderly surroundings, prompting them to send it to the laboratory for examination. Diane's acquaintances reported that she had no known enemies, and the police discovered that she was in a romantic relationship with Dennis Conley, a man she had plans to spend her life with. Diane had been married before, but that marriage ended quickly. She met Dennis through a dating service, and he had 2 children from a previous marriage. Dennis was a businessman living in Houston, 150 miles from Austin, where Diane resided. Despite the distance, Diane and Dennis formed a close bond, with Dennis proposing to her after 2 months with a valuable platinum ring. However, according to Diane's friends, the relationship began to decline recently. Diane had been feeling controlled by Dennis at times. Diane was also troubled by the decision to relocate to Houston, which meant leaving her home in the suburbs of Austin. She put her house up for sale, but realtors struggled to find a buyer willing to pay the asking price of $435,000. This led detectives to suspect that Dennis might be involved in Diane's death, prompting them to invite him to the police station for a conversation. Dennis agreed to speak with them without a lawyer. The medical examiner determined that Diane died sometime between 3 p.m. on November 15th and 3 a.m. on November 16th. Notably, the wedding ring Dennis had given her was missing from her finger, while her other jewelry remained untouched in the bedroom. This raised questions about the killer's motives and whether the ring was removed to mislead investigators. During the police interview, Dennis appeared to be a grieving man. He was asked about his relationship with Diane and his whereabouts on the day of her death and the day her body was found. Dennis claimed he was in Houston at the time. He stated that he last spoke with Diane on the morning of November 15th and spent the rest of the day at work without contacting her again. When he couldn't reach Diane the next morning, he left a message on her voicemail. The police took Dennis' fingerprints and DNA sample, but ultimately cleared him as a suspect after verifying his alibi. He had not left the city, so the detectives had to expand their search for a new lead. Further inquiry revealed that an unknown man had inspected Diane's house a few days before her death, claiming to be a potential buyer. He had planned to return with his wife to make a joint purchase decision. This clue became a top priority for the police, who began questioning the owners of properties for sale in the area, hoping that someone may have seen this mysterious buyer. Several women in the area reported that a suspicious man had visited their homes around the time of Diane's murder. He, described as being 35 to 45 years old with a large nose and dark hair, had arrived unaccompanied by a real estate agent. 6 of the women refused to let him in, but one allowed him to enter and view her home. She who let him in reported that he acted strangely, showing no interest in the layout of the house or its features. Instead, he specifically asked to see the bedroom on the second floor. When she became uncomfortable and asked him to leave, he introduced himself as Walter Miller. The police searched their databases for anyone matching the name Walter Miller, but the individuals they found did not match his age or appearance. A forensic artist created a sketch of the suspect based on the women's descriptions. Diane's killer removed the cable ties that had bound her hands, but the rationale behind this action is unclear. Did he know his victim personally? A subsequent autopsy revealed no evidence of forced intimacy or assault, yet the police remained vigilant, returning to the crime scene to search for potential traces of semen. However, these efforts yielded nothing. A police sketch of a potential suspect in the Diane Holick case was broadcast on the evening news, urging anyone who recognized the person to come forward. One of the few leads investigators had was a towel from Diane's house with a few short hairs on it. But the hairs were rootless, making it impossible to obtain a complete DNA sample. A woman contacted the police after seeing the sketch and reported a similar encounter. She and her husband had put their house up for sale 6 months prior, and a man had come to visit, claiming he wanted to buy the house for cash and needed to see it first. However, she refused to let him in, and he left. 2 months later, the same man returned to her doorstep and introduced himself as Jim Taylor. She was home alone with her young daughter, as her husband had just left for work. He asked to look around the house, but she denied his request again. This time, he became angry and aggressive, yelling and demanding to be let in. She immediately recalled the encounter and remembered writing down his name and the license plate number of his minivan. The police now had a crucial lead to investigate. A search of the vehicle's registration revealed that the owner was not Jim Taylor, but Patrick Anthony Russo. Initially, Russo seemed like an unlikely suspect. He was a married man with 2 children, lived 40 minutes outside of Austin, and was a member of a church music band. However, a deeper look into his past revealed a disturbing history of violent crimes against women. Russo had been convicted of a series of attacks, including one that involved abducting and attempting to strangle a victim with cable ties. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison but was released on parole after serving only 8 years. While in prison, he met his future wife, Janet, a church volunteer. The police found it hard to believe that Russo's connection to the case was mere coincidence. The police visited Anthony Russo's house with a search warrant, and he seemed unsurprised by their arrival. Although they found no evidence of Diane's belongings, including her ring, in his house or minivan, a neighbor reported seeing a similar vehicle at Diane's house on the day she died. In the utility room, investigators discovered cable ties identical to those that left marks on Diane's wrists. However, These ties are widely available at hardware stores. The police asked Anthony to come to the station for further questioning, where they inquired about his whereabouts on November 15th and 16th. Anthony claimed that on the 15th, he drove to Austin to visit a religious radio station but was unable to enter because no one answered the door. Notably, the radio station was near Diane's house. He stated that he left the station around 4 p.m. but got lost due to a hurricane, arriving home around 6 p.m. This alibi is questionable, as the forensic medical expert reported that Diane died between 3 p.m. and 3 a.m. Russo was questioned by the police about whether he was looking to buy a house. He claimed he had not inquired about any properties for buy, which would later prove to be an important statement. When shown a photo of Diane, Russo remained impassive and denied having met her. With no evidence connecting him to the crime, the police had no choice but to release him. However, when detectives investigated further by visiting a radio station Russo had mentioned, they discovered that his previous statement was a fabrication. The employees at a local business explained that they didn't lock the doors during a tornado warning because a large crowd had gathered in the lobby. Meanwhile, a woman who was selling her house contacted the police after encountering a man who resembled the suspect in a recent crime. She had been at home with her child when he came to her door, claiming to be interested in buying a house. He was holding a pamphlet with real estate listings, including her own home. She allowed him into her home, but when she showed him a bedroom, he attempted to attack her. However, he quickly fled when he heard her child crying in the next room. She retained the pamphlet, which was later given to the police. They found a clear fingerprint on the pamphlet, which belonged to Anthony Russo. Russo denied ever looking at houses for sale, but the fingerprint proved he had lied to the police. Russo's false statement was a misdemeanor, and since he was still on probation, it was a violation of his parole conditions. The police arrested him, fearing that he might flee while they searched for evidence linking him to the death of Diane. To ensure public safety, the authorities decided to keep Russo in custody. The police were able to locate 15 women who had showed homes to a man who matched Anthony Russo's description. All 15 women were asked to identify the suspect from a lineup of 5 men who were similarly dressed and had similar appearances. However, only 10 of the women were able to positively identify Russo as he who had visited them to view homes. The remaining 5 women were unable to make an identification. Despite this, the police still had reason to believe Russo was involved in the crime and brought him in for further questioning. During the interrogation, Russo continued to deny any involvement in the crime, but eventually stopped answering questions and requested to see his wife. Meanwhile, the police received the results of a DNA analysis from the laboratory. The results showed that a hair found on a towel at the victim's home matched Russo's DNA profile. While this was a significant piece of evidence, it was not conclusive, as there was a small chance that the hair could have belonged to someone else with the same DNA profile. Despite the accumulation of circumstantial evidence, the police still lacked a direct link between Russo and the victim's death. Investigation revealed 2 key pieces of evidence that implicated in Diane's death. Firstly, cell phone data placed Russo in the same area as Diane on the day she died. Secondly, a thorough examination of Russo's home computer uncovered a disturbing search history. Russo frequently visited an adult website where he consumed content explicitly depicting strangulation during intimate activities. Furthermore, the website required subscription, indicating that Russo actively sought out this material and was willing to pay for it. 2 days prior to Diane's death, Russo had accessed a particular story on the website that told the tale of a man who, under the guise of being a buyer, infiltrated a lonely woman's home, strangled her, and then stole valuables to make the crime appear as a robbery, thus disguising his true motive of satiating his desire for strangulation. Detectives delved into Russo's financial life and found he and his wife had a mere $2,000 in savings and were still making mortgage payments on their current home, clearly indicating he was in no position to buy a new house. Without concrete evidence, police arrested Russo and charged him with the murder of Diane Hollick nearly 2.5 years after her death, which took place on November 15, 2001. In court, 14 women testifying under oath that Russo had approached them about viewing homes, often visiting them in person on the day of the murder. Notably, these women all matched a specific profile, suggesting Russo had been observing them beforehand. While most refused him entry, one woman allowed him in initially but soon asked him to leave due to his strange demeanor. Russo's interest in homes was not random, as he specifically sought out homes occupied by women of a particular age group. The prosecution presented evidence that Russo visited homes for sale, often targeting women who lived alone. Russo visited Diane's house again, likely at her invitation, but this time with a specific intention. He had planned his actions carefully to avoid leaving any evidence. On a rainy day, Diane offered him a towel to dry off, which he casually discarded on the back of the sofa. As she showed him around the house, Russo attacked her on the second floor. Prosecutors believed that Russo derived pleasure from the act of strangulation, which ultimately led to Diane's death. Before leaving the scene, Russo took cable ties and Diane's wedding ring, which were never found by the police. He used a spare key hidden at the front door to lock up behind him. This was the prosecution's version of events. At the trial, Russo's current and former wives testified that he had a history of enjoying the act of strangulation. It's worth noting that Russo had a prior conviction for a similar crime. After deliberating for 11 hours, the jury found Patrick Anthony Russo guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison, but never admitted to his guilt, despite his history of similar crimes. Russo will become eligible for parole again and can submit his initial petition in 2044. At that point, he will be approximately 80 years old. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Julie Minogue. Julie Minogue was born on July 19, 1982, in Goshen, New York, a charming town where she was raised by her loving parents, Gerald Minogue and Sandra Barish Doper. She grew up with a sister, Allison Barati Corcoran, and a brother, Peter Gerald Minogue. Throughout her school years, Julie excelled academically at Monroe Woodbury schools, ultimately graduating from Monroe Woodbury High School. She continued her education at Orange County Community College, expanding her knowledge and embracing new experiences. After completing her education, Julie Minogue became a dedicated medical assistant at Coastal Obstetrics and Gynecology in Connecticut. Julie prioritized an active lifestyle, enjoying running and walking to stay energized. She had two sons, Nicholas Keith Turner and Sean Michael Turner. Although the details about her marriage and husband are unknown, she has a strong bond between her and her sons. Julie Minogue found love again in 2017 with Ewan Anthony DeWitt from Roxbury. Together, they welcomed a son, Luke Anthony Minogue, in 2019. However, their relationship eventually fell apart, causing them to divorce. In 2021, she moved into an apartment on Salem Walk in Milford with her sons, putting their happiness first. By 2022, Julie's eldest son, Nicholas, was 21 and had bravely served in the Coast Guard. Her middle son, Sean, was a 17-year-old high school senior. Luke, her youngest son with Ewan, was 3 years old and brought joy to their household. Julie was 40, and life seemed to be going well for her and her 3 boys. However, tragedy struck her family. On the night of December 6, 2022, 17-year-old Sean Minogue was awoken by terrifying screams. At first, he thought the noise was an echo from the neighbor's house, but the crying became louder. Realizing something was terribly wrong, Sean rushed downstairs, concerned for his mother's safety. As he descended into the darkness, he caught a man wielding an axe. and his mother lying on the floor, covered in blood. Amidst the chaos, Sean heard the haunting words, "You didn't believe me," echoing in his mind. Sean quickly ran upstairs, locked his door, and called 911 to report the incident. He placed a chair behind the locked door and opened his window to seek help. Shortly after, he could hear the sound of sirens and people approaching. When he heard the police voice, he mistakenly thought there was an intruder, so he jumped out the window. The officers found the frightened teenager and ensured his safety. Meanwhile, police officers entered the kitchen and discovered Julie Minogue lying on the floor in a pool of blood. Her face and skull had severe cuts. A large axe was found on the stove, indicating the severity of the crime. In the living room, Julie's 3-year-old son Luke was found sitting on the couch, seemingly in shock. He was unresponsive, neither crying nor speaking. An officer stayed with Luke and provided comfort until more police officers arrived at the scene. Following Julie's tragic death, her body was taken to the medical examiner's office for a thorough examination. After a meticulous autopsy, the medical examiner determined that the cause of her death was the severe chopped wounds and impact injuries to her head, torso, and extremities. The detailed findings have provided vital evidence about the attack and the cause of her death. As the police took custody of the evidence they found on the gas stove, they conducted a thorough search of the area to look for any potential evidence that could lead them to the perpetrator. They searched every inch of the house, examining each room for any clues that could shed light on the crime. The investigation attracted the attention of concerned neighbors, who gathered nearby. They was eager to support the investigation in any way they could. A neighbor gave evidence with camera footage from outside his home at the Longmeadow complex. Police have investigated the footage, hoping it will provide vital clues. As they watched, they witnessed a person walking with an axe, closely matching the description Sean had provided. The police then began searching for the identity of the man with the axe. On December 6, 2022, a major breakthrough occurred when a woman called the police to report a phone call she received from her son. With a shaky voice, she shared the shocking revelation that her son had just told her that he had killed his girlfriend. The seriousness of her words prompted an immediate response from law enforcement. They quickly located the woman and engaged her in conversation. During the conversation, police discovered that the man responsible for the disturbing confession was Ewan, a 42-year-old man who had previously been in a relationship with Julie. With this important information, the police made efforts to contact Ewan. However, Ewan abruptly hung up the call. To better understand Ewan's background, the police investigated his history. Ewan was born in 1979 in Roxbury. He had a wide range of interests and pursuits. A skilled athlete, he was passionate about ice hockey and even played in semi-professional leagues. Ewan also holds a bachelor's degree in history from Siena College. Not satisfied with just one career, he also pursued a career as a firefighter, showing his ambition. In 2006, Ewan DeWitt's life took a tumultuous turn when he was arrested in Connecticut for driving under the influence and traffic offenses. After pleading guilty, he was given a suspended prison sentence and placed on probation. However, Ewan turned his life around in 2009 when he enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps. Over the course of 5 years, he distinguished himself as a skilled weapons specialist and non-commissioned officer, ultimately earning the rank of Lance Corporal. During his time in the Marines, Ewan served as a machine gunner and was part of the elite 1st Reconnaissance Battalion. A notable photo from his time in service shows him bravely operating a .50 caliber machine gun on a vehicle during a defense exercise. Ewan's leadership skills and expertise helped him become captain of the machine gun section. Ewan served multiple tours in combat zones, including Afghanistan and the Middle East, alongside his fellow Marines. His selfless dedication was highlighted in a 2015 article in the Registered Citizen. One notable incident occurred shortly after the birth of his son, when he was arrested for attacking Julie Minogue. According to reports, he threw a large object at her, destroying her phone and preventing her from calling for help. Fearing for her safety, Julie sought refuge at a neighbor's house and contacted the police. In addition, Ewan, while intoxicated, getting into a heated argument with Julie and throwing a playpen at her head, causing a serious injury. Their son witnessed this incident and provided a statement. After Ewan went to rehabilitation, Julie sought a restraining order to protect herself from his abusive behavior. The court granted her a protective order that allowed for limited contact. However, Ewan was still granted visitation rights, which created ongoing concerns for Julie and her family's safety. In addition to their personal struggles, Julie and Ewan became embroiled in a series of family court cases starting in 2021. Julie initiated proceedings by seeking child support for their son Luke. The court ruled in her favor in October 2021, ordering Ewan to provide financial support. Ewan retaliated by taking Julie to court seeking resolution on visitation rights. In an effort to mediate the situation, the court granted supervised visitation, with a further hearing scheduled for April 2023 to revisit the matter. Julie and Ewan's divorce leads to many problems. Just 3 weeks before her death, Julie took action by going to Milford Police Station on November 14, 2022. She filed a complaint against Ewan for allegedly sending her more than 200 text messages in just 2 days, violating a protective order prohibiting him from making contact. Officer Scott Nablin carefully collected evidence of the text messages from Julie Minogue's phone, which further strengthened the case against Ewan. In a statement, Julie expressed deep concern for her safety and the well-being of her children. She stated that she could no longer tolerate the abuse and was seeking protection. Julie detailed the ongoing harassment she had endured and her fear of Ewan's behavior. She mentioned that he had a history of trouble with drugs and alcohol and was worried that he might harm her. In the meantime, Julie Minogue sought a civil restraining order against Ewan. On December 1, 2022, she presented evidence to a judge, including text messages, Ewan's history of substance abuse and mental health issues, and his violent past. Julie expressed concern for Ewan's well-being and emphasized the need for him to receive therapy. She believed Ewan posed a threat to others and should not be allowed to interact with anyone until he received proper treatment. The judge granted Julie a no-contact restraining order on December 1, 2022, to protect her from Ewan. The police investigation focused on Ewan, and they thoroughly searched the area around the Salem Walk condominium. They also visited a dive bar on Ocean Avenue in West Haven, asking patrons for help and providing information about the ongoing investigation. They asked anyone who saw Ewan to contact the authorities. Soon after, witnesses discovered someone resembling Ewan. They immediately alerted the police, who then observed the suspect entering a food truck in a nearby parking lot. Police quickly surrounded the truck and apprehended Ewan without any resistance. During the interrogation, Ewan initially remained silent, but after hours of intense interrogation, he finally confessed to killing Julie with an axe. He admitted to entering her house through the kitchen window, hiding and waiting for her to arrive. When Julie entered the kitchen, Ewan attacked her with an axe. Julie's son, Nicholas, witnessed the terrifying scene as he came downstairs. Frightened, Ewan dropped the axe on the gas stove and fled. The details of the incident, as revealed by Ewan, sent shockwaves through the investigation and provided a disturbing account of the events that occurred that night. During Ewan's first court appearance on December 7, 2022, Assistant State's Attorney Alana Paul updated the judge on the case. She said that Ewan confessed to the crime, but even if he did not, the evidence against him was compelling. Given the severity of the case, Paul argued that a significant sentence was necessary. Judge Odin Grogan set Ewan DeWitt's bond at $5 million due to concerns about his history of ignoring court orders and the need to prioritize public safety. As a result, Ewan was placed under surveillance. A hearing was scheduled for December 14, 2022, to further address the case. On December 14, 2022, Ewan faced multiple charges, including murder, violating a protective order, violating a restraining order, risking injury to a minor, and reckless endangerment. These charges aim to hold Ewan accountable for the full scope of his actions. A hearing for his pending cases was set for April 6, 2023. The family of the victim has released a statement, vowing to take action and hold accountable those who failed to protect their loved one. They hope that this case will lead to improved safeguards for individuals experiencing domestic violence and abuse. The family is committed to creating positive change and preventing similar tragedies from happening in the future. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Turpin family. David Turpin was born on October 17, 1961, in Princeton, West Virginia, to Betty and James Turpin. David came from a devoutly religious family and had a relatively normal upbringing. During his high school years at Princeton High School, David participated in various activities, including Bible Club, Chess Club, Science Club, and a cappella choir. David enrolled at Virginia Tech University after graduating from high school to pursue a degree in electrical engineering in Blacksburg, Virginia. Thanks to his exceptional skills in computer engineering, David landed jobs at leading defense technology companies such as Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin. Louise Turpin was born on May 24, 1968, in Princeton, West Virginia. She is the eldest of 6 children of Wayne Robinette, a preacher, and Phyllis Robinette, who worked at Walmart and sang in the church choir. The Robinette children's home environment was tense due to frequent conflicts between their parents, which led to harsh treatment. Louise and her sisters were sexually abused by a family member as children. This traumatic experience was a secret kept within the family. According to Louise's younger sister, Elizabeth, Louise played a protective, gentle, kind, and nurturing role. She comforted her siblings during their parents' violent conflicts and protected them from abusive relatives. At the age of 15, Louise met 22-year-old David Turpin at church. They kept their relationship a secret for fear of Louise's parents' reaction. However, when the truth was discovered, Louise's mother Phyllis eventually accepted their relationship, partly because David came from a devout Christian family and Louise convinced her. David and Louise decided to keep their relationship a secret from her father, Wayne, knowing that he would be furious if he found out. In January 1985, 23-year-old David visited Louise's school, Princeton High School, where he had graduated 5 years earlier. He convinced the staff to let him take Louise out of class, and she left willingly with him. They began their journey south, planning to elope. When Louise's parents discovered she was missing, they called the police. Before the police could catch up with them, the couple headed to Texas, where they planned to secretly marry. However, when they were stopped, they agreed to return to West Virginia. When they returned home, Wayne and Phyllis's reactions were surprisingly calm. Initially, Wayne was angry with Phyllis for allowing their daughter, Louise, to date David. However, when he saw how much they loved each other, he realized that it would be difficult to separate them. So Wayne agreed to let them marry on February 11, 1985, in a small ceremony in Pearisburg, Virginia. 2 years later, Louise's parents divorced and Louise's father, Wayne, took a job as the chief deputy assessor of Mercer County. After marrying David, Louise began to live more independently and freely. Louise was happy with her new life. In 1988, Louise gave birth to her first daughter, and 18 months later, their second child was born. David was then transferred to General Dynamics, and his family moved to Fort Worth, Texas. They settled in a modern neighborhood called Meadow Creek. Louise's family lived a lavish lifestyle thanks to David's high-paying job. Louise, eager to show off her family's newfound wealth, invited relatives from West Virginia to visit. Having grown up on a tight budget, Louise was happy to show off her current success. To make their visit comfortable, David and Louise paid all the expenses. The Louises welcomed a baby boy in 1991, bringing them even more joy. However, by 1992, the Louises were in debt. Despite their financial struggles, they continued to live a lavish lifestyle. In 1993, Louise became pregnant with her fourth child, a girl. In 1994, Louise's oldest daughter started first grade at Meadow Creek Elementary School. She looked neglected, with greasy, unkempt hair, dirty clothes, and poor hygiene. Her appearance made her the target of teasing by her classmates. In 1995, Louise's family welcomed a fifth child, a boy. Louise's family seemed carefree despite their financial difficulties and continued to splurge on luxuries, treating relatives to expensive meals. When Louise's younger sister Elizabeth joined them on their 1996 vacation in Fort Worth, they stopped at a casino in Louisiana on the way. While at the casino, Louise asked Elizabeth to babysit the children so she and David could gamble. They asked Elizabeth not to tell anyone about this, knowing that it was against their Christian values. During this visit, David and Louise's gambling led to losses. Tensions became apparent when David claimed that Louise had a serious gambling addiction and blamed Louise for their financial difficulties. While staying with Louise's family, Elizabeth was shocked by the family's disturbing behavior. David and Louise did not show much affection for their children and tightly controlled every aspect of their lives. Elizabeth was particularly concerned about David's behavior, as he often invaded Elizabeth's privacy by entering the bathroom while she was showering, making her feel uncomfortable and insecure. In May 1997, the Tuppins had their fifth child. By September of that year, concerns about their eldest daughter and the possible signs of sexual abuse began to grow. In 1998, the family had a sixth child. Although David had a well-paying job, the family's financial situation worsened due to their frequent gambling, which caused significant financial strain. In the spring of 1999, the eldest daughter dropped out of school, as did the other children. Louise and David announced that they were homeschooling their children. In late 1998, the bank foreclosed on the family's home in Fort Worth, so Louise and David moved to Rio Vista, Texas, a less populated area. The new home that Louise and David had in Rio Vista was in serious disrepair when they moved in. It was dirty, stained, and smelled bad. Before moving into the Rio Vista home, the Louises had their seventh child. Over the next 6 years, the family added 5 more children. Over time, the parents, David and Louise Turpin, became increasingly irresponsible and abusive. They physically harmed their children, beating, choking, and whipping them with belts, often for trivial reasons such as not letting them go to the bathroom. The children were also severely neglected in terms of personal hygiene, with some only bathing once a year. Despite purchasing nutritious food, David and Louise often withheld food from their children, forcing them to starve. The parents would tease their children by leaving uneaten meals in plain sight. Instead, the children were fed cheap frozen meals, resulting in severe malnutrition. This neglect was evident in the children's slow development, pale skin, and youthful appearances that did not match their actual ages. In 2004, Louise's family moved to a nicer trailer, leaving behind their old home in Rio Vista, which had become uninhabitable due to years of neglect, garbage accumulation, and rodent infestation. In 2008, Louise Turpin, then 40, had a shocking conversation with her sister Teresa. Louise revealed that she and her husband David had abandoned their Christian education and stopped attending church. Instead, they had become interested in Satanism and used Ouija boards. Louise also confessed that she and David had engaged in wife swapping, a lifestyle that involved having sex with other couples they met online. What was even more disturbing was that they often left their younger children at home, in the care of their older siblings, while they went out to meet strangers they had met online. This drastic change in Louise, who had always been caring and responsible, worried her older sister Teresa. Despite their financial struggles, Louise's family often went to Disneyland in matching outfits, taking lots of happy photos. Louise made sure to send these photos to her family and her parents. The only indication to Louise's family that the children were okay was through these photos, which showed them appearing happy despite being very thin. In 2014, Louise's family moved to Paris, California, about 20 miles north of Murrieta. By this time, the child abuse had reached an extremely violent level. David and Louise had tied their children to their beds with ropes. If the children tried to escape, the ropes were replaced with chains and locks. The children were locked in the room for around 20 hours a day, forced to endure the stench that permeated the air. In 2015, the family welcomed their 13th and final child. Soon after, the family traveled to Las Vegas to celebrate David and Louise's 30th wedding anniversary. Faced with the horrors of their living conditions, Louise and David's 17-year-old daughter made the brave decision to seek help by reporting the abuse to the police. She climbed out of the window and quickly called the police on the phone. During a tense 20-minute 911 call, she detailed the deplorable living conditions and the countless abuses she and her siblings endured. With photographs of their desperate situation as evidence, she waited for the police to arrive. When police arrived at the scene, they witnessed a horrifying scene: a severely malnourished girl who appeared to be about 10 years old. The girl led police to the front door, where they found Louise. Upon entering the home, police immediately smelled a strong stench that made it difficult to breathe. Despite the strong odor, police continued to investigate and made a horrifying discovery: 3 younger children chained to beds. The home was in a state of extreme disarray, with trash and dirt covering the floor because there was no toilet access. Police quickly took the younger children to Riverside University Medical Center for evaluation and care, while the older children were taken to Corona Regional Medical Center. David and Louise Turpin were arrested on January 14, 2018, for child abuse and torture. Within 4 days, they faced multiple charges. Each of them was charged with 12 counts of torture, 7 counts of abuse, 6 counts of child abuse and neglect, and 12 counts of false imprisonment. David Turpin also faces a separate charge of lewd conduct with a child under 14. Among their children, a 2-year-old child showed no obvious signs of abuse. In addition to being abused, the children were treated extremely cruelly by their parents. They suffered severe physical abuse that resulted in neurological damage. The children of Louise and David lacked basic life skills and knowledge. Although their parents, David and Louise Turpin, bought them toys, the children were not allowed to play with them. They were forced to stay up until the early hours of the morning, often until 4 or 5 a.m., and were not allowed to go to bed before that time. In 2018, the court took action against the Turpin parents. On January 24, the judge ordered that David and Louise have no contact with their children for 3 years, and that all contact be through their attorney. On June 21 of the same year, the court decided that there was enough evidence against David and Louise to proceed to trial. The trial concluded on February 22, 2019. On that day, David and Louise Turpin pleaded guilty to 14 counts including torture, abuse, false imprisonment, and child endangerment. During the trial, David and Louise had an emotional reunion with their children. The children appeared to have forgiven their parents and were affectionate toward David and Louise. Each expressed a wish for their parents to be well and shared that their lives were going well. David and Louise sincerely apologized for their past actions and expressed their deep love for their children, wishing them success in life. David and Louise were subsequently sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. As of 2022, Louise, 53, and David, 60, are both eligible for parole in 2037. The severe abuse and neglect in their home shocked the community and beyond. The community came together to support the children, giving them hope and a new start in life. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Kristen Rossum. Ralph and Constance Rossum were dedicated parents to their 3 children, prioritizing their kids' development and well-being above all else. Their children were educated from a young age, attended good schools, and they encouraging their children to explore their interests through a variety of extracurricular activities. However, their daughter Kristen struggled to cope with the pressure of living up to family expectations. Feeling overwhelmed and desperate to escape, Kristen began to rebel by lying, skipping school, and finding ways to escape her temporary problems. At first, she felt more comfortable when she drank alcohol, but over time, the effects of alcohol stopped being effective for her. As a result, she turned to the controlled substance methamphetamine and eventually became dependent on it. Methamphetamine, commonly referred to as meth, is widely considered the most addictive illicit substance in the United States. Its use often leading to paranoia, impaired judgment, and euphoria. Kristen's parents noticed her erratic behavior and, in a conversation, discovered she'd been struggling with the substance since high school. Her entire family, who were highly educated, were shocked and deeply affected by this behavior. After months of conflict with her parents, 17-year-old Kristen secretly ran away. While vacationing in Mexico with friends, she met a tall, handsome man named Gregory DeVillers, who was 7 years her senior. Over time, they fell in love with each other. He helped her get settled and get her health back. With Gregory's support, she turned her life around by getting a job at the local forensic service as a toxicology assistant. Her skills impressed the employer and her addiction was forgotten. As a forensic assistant, Kristen graduated from college with honors. Her teachers and employers praised her and gave her the Best Student Award without knowing the reason why she loved her chosen profession. After 5 years of dating Gregory, they had their grand wedding on June 5, 1999. Kristen's parents loved Gregory dearly and were relieved that their daughter had overcome the pain of her past and was now on the path toward a bright and fulfilling future. In March 2000, Kristen was hired by the San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office as a toxicologist, specializing in analyzing body fluids for narcotics. Gregory was working in the biotechnology industry at the time. But Kristen soon grew tired of her dull and monotonous life, and she began to look for excitement elsewhere. She met a new co-worker, Michael Robertson, who had just been appointed as the department head. Although Michael was married, they unexpectedly developed strong feelings for each other. They couldn't keep their relationship a secret for long. Gregory discovered many love letters between his wife and Michael. The marriage relationship was getting worse, yet Gregory remained hopeful that it could be salvaged. Understanding his wife's weakness, he made an effort to support and rescue her from her difficulties, hoping to mend their relationship. This time Kristen did not want to be saved. She asked for a divorce on Monday morning, November 6, 2000. Kristen was getting ready for work as usual. Gregory was sick and at home. Kristen was very tired, worrying about her husband. In the days after their breakup talk, he was indifferent and unusually calm. Kristen informed Gregory's workplace that he was sick, and then she also visited her husband during her lunch break. Gregory fell asleep at 9:22 p.m. That same day, Kristen called the emergency services to report that her husband Gregory was not breathing. He had most likely committed suicide as he was home alone. Kristen was crying on the phone and she lost her temper, so she did not listen to the dispatcher's instructions about performing an autopsy and performing first aid on her husband. Police and paramedics arrived at the scene at 10:19 p.m. Gregory was pronounced dead. He was lying on the bedroom floor with his torso exposed, surrounded by scattered rose petals. An examination of the room revealed evidence suggesting that Gregory taking a fatal amount of multiple prescription medications. Empty painkiller bottles were scattered around the room, and torn wedding photos were found on his bed. When questioned, Kristen said she told Gregory she wanted to separate the night before, just over a year after their wedding. She felt regret about the marriage, thinking they rushed into it too quickly. Kristen also found Gregory too controlling and she wanted more space. Gregory's death was initially ruled a suicide, caused by a powerful sedative. Kristen signed the cremation papers, but Gregory's family and friends were skeptical. They had noticed no changes in his personality or mood, and they believed he would never use those fatal drugs. The family's doubts led them to try to stop the cremation and request an autopsy. Their persistence eventually led investigators to consider the possibility that Gregory's death was not a suicide, but a murder. An investigation into Gregory's death revealed the fentanyl, a painkiller 150 times more potent than morphine, along with smaller amounts of other substances including clonazepam and trace. Initially, the cause of death was suspected to be an overdose of oxycodone, often referred to as heroin, but further investigation pointed to fentanyl as the lethal dose. A substance can provide pain relief and produce a feeling of euphoria. However, it can also slow down breathing and be fatal if not treated in time. Because of the strong effects of clonazepam and other substances found in Gregory's body, investigators speculate that someone else intentionally gave him a fatal dose of fentanyl. Kristen became the prime suspect due to her extensive knowledge and access to powerful prescription medications like fentanyl. During questioning, Kristen's disheveled appearance and history of substance abuse raised suspicions about her potential involvement in Gregory's death. Her own testimony revealed inconsistencies on the day her husband died. Initially, Kristen told medical staff that he was not taking any medications, but later changed her statement to suggest that he may have taken oxycodone at the hospital. The change in her story, combined with her knowledge and access to powerful prescription drugs, supported the argument that Kristen was involved in her husband's death. On November 8, the police received a call from Russ Lowe, a coworker of Kristen's. Russ revealed that Kristen was having an affair with her boss. Further investigation uncovered evidence of Kristen's relationship with her boss, Michael. This evidence consisted of affectionate emails and computer documents. Notably, the documents also revealed Michael's knowledge of phenyl, a substance that later became significant in the murder case. Kristen and Michael's relationship became a key aspect of the investigation. It is suspected that Gregory became a threat to Michael and Kristen because he knew that Kristen had access to the laboratory and that she had secretly used narcotics. Michael covered for Kristen, supporting her actions. During the investigation, Michael admitted to being aware of Kristen's drug addiction at the time. Although no charges were filed against Michael and Kristen, but they were both fired for violating several rules. Kristen's troubles started in January, when police searched her home for evidence of drug use. Initially, she was arrested but later released on bail. A new proof shed light on the investigation, Kristen's diary, uncovered during the initial examination. Kristen didn't write the diary for personal reflection, but rather as a way to present herself to others and maintain her innocence, while making her husband Gregory's death look like a perfect suicide. Notably, on the day of his death, Kristen bought a rose to pair with lingerie that suggested infidelity. A medical examination of Gregory's body revealed that he had been unconscious for at least 6 hours before his death. The estimated time of death was likely about an hour to an hour and a half before it was officially confirmed. Furthermore, bruises were found around the needle marks on his arm. During the investigation, a short supply of the lethal substance was discovered at Kristen's workplace, along with other narcotic substances. A suspicious vial of fentanyl was also found, leading police to suspect that Kristen had poisoned Gregory without his knowledge. Kristen was arrested on June 25, 2001, and charged with first-degree murder. After spending 6 months in custody, she was released on bail. The prosecution's main argument in her first trial centered around the motive for the murder. They claimed that Kristen killed Gregory to protect her reputation because he threatened to expose her drug addiction and her affair with Michael. The prosecution alleged that Kristen used a powerful synthetic opioid called fentanyl to poison Gregory. Fentanyl is 80 times more potent than morphine. It was suggested that Kristen initially attempted to kill Gregory with a different substance, clonazepam, but when this failed, she used fentanyl. To make it seem like Gregory had taken his own life, Kristen staged the scene by ripping out pages from her diary and placing personal items, including rose petals and a wedding photograph, around his body. As a biochemistry graduate, Kristen leveraged her knowledge of chemistry and drugs to orchestrate Gregory's death. The prosecution also claimed that Kristen deliberately withheld information about the fentanyl from her colleagues in the medical examiner's office, aiming to mislead them into believing Gregory's death was self-inflicted before his autopsy. The developments of what happened that day are reproduced as follows. On the morning of November 6, she contacted Gregory's workplace to report his absence, then headed to her workplace. Her colleagues stated that around 9 a.m., she began her workday. However, they recalled finding her crying in their Michael's office about an hour later. The manager of the apartment building where Kristen and Gregory were staying witnessed Kristen returning home at 12:10 p.m. Shortly after, at 12:41 p.m., Kristen went to a nearby grocery store and bought various items. Among these purchases was a credit card statement. This confirmed her emergence at the store several hours before Gregory's death. Additionally, Kristen made multiple phone calls to Michael. The San Diego County Medical Examiner, Dr. Blackburn, who performed Gregory's autopsy, testified that Gregory had been deceased for at least an hour by the time paramedics arrived. The examiner also disclosed that Gregory was suffering from early-stage bronchopneumonia at the time of death. Breathing difficulties occur when lung secretions accumulate, often as a result of poor breathing. This can happen when a person is unconscious or taking very shallow breaths. Dr. Blackburn presented additional evidence, stating that Gregory's body contained a significant amount of urine in his bladder at the time of death. This accumulation would have caused severe discomfort if Gregory was conscious, suggesting he likely struggled to breathe for 6 to 12 hours before his death. Furthermore, Dr. Blackburn found it unlikely that Gregory, in an unconscious state, could have scattered rose petals on himself. During the trial, Dr. Blackburn also testified that the level of clonazepam in Gregory's blood was not high enough to be considered an overdose, and therefore, would not have been the cause of death. Dr. Theodore Stanley, testifying for the prosecution, stated that fentanyl, a powerful and fast-acting painkiller, can have severe side effects leading to respiratory arrest. The onset of its effects varies, based on the administration method. The fastest method of maximal effect is intravenous administration, which occurs within about 5 minutes. Intramuscular injection results in maximum effect within 15 to 20 minutes. This is followed by oral administration, with maximum effect within 20 to 30 minutes. The slowest method of maximal effect is the transdermal patch, which takes about 16 hours. Dr. Theodore testified before the court that fentanyl is typically not taken orally because the liver breaks down approximately 65% of the substance. As a result, only 35% of fentanyl is able to enter the bloodstream. However, when questioned about how fentanyl was detected in Gregory's body, neither Dr. Blackburn nor Dr. Theodore was able to provide a clear explanation. Dr. Theodore found that the amounts of fentanyl in Gregory's body, combined with the fact that Gregory had been unconscious and breathing shallowly for hours before his death, suggested that the fentanyl may have been given to Gregory by someone else. During the trial, the prosecution had difficulty explaining to the jury exactly how Kristen poisoned her husband. However, there was evidence that she may have applied a fentanyl patch to Gregory's arm while he was sleeping. Kristen's former workplace provided a crucial piece of evidence, as 15 fentanyl patches were discovered missing from the lab. While Kristen maintained her innocence, her defense team accepted that fentanyl was the cause of Gregory's death, but they suggested an alternative explanation. According to the defense, Gregory intentionally gave himself a fatal dose due to feelings of desperation about family problems. In court, Kristen recounted her of events on the morning of November 6. She recalled waking up to find Gregory in a state of distress. Gregory called his employer at 7:42 a.m. to report his illness and informed them that he would not be going to work. Kristen claimed she left for work, but returned to their apartment during her lunch break to check on Gregory. When she asked him why he was so upset, Gregory replied that he was feeling unwell due to taking oxycodone and clonazepam and planned to stay home and rest. Kristen returned to work after that and came home around 8 p.m. Upon arrival, she found Gregory in bed and assumed he was asleep. She went to take a shower, and when came out, she tried to wake him, but when she touched him she felt cold. Kristen then immediately called emergency services. During questioning, the prosecutor questioned the validity of Kristen's explanation. She admitted to lying in the past and lying about her drug use, which made her testimony seem suspect. Autopsy and toxicology results showed that Gregory had been unconscious for approximately 6 to 8 hours before his death, contradicting Kristen's initial claim that they had lunch together that day. The defense argued that the concentration of clonazepam in Gregory's blood was not fatal on its own. However, they acknowledged that the combined effects of oxycodone, an opiate, and clonazepam, a benzodiazepine, could be more potent than the effects of either substance alone. They suggested that Gregory may have accidentally taken the drugs, but they could not explain why the high concentration of fentanyl was found in his body, which remains unexplained. After 8 hours of deliberation, the jury found Kristen guilty of first-degree murder and special circumstance murder due to poisoning. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Kristen claimed innocence and appealed the verdict in the appellate court, where a critical mistake by her own defense team was discovered. Her lawyers had admitted that fentanyl caused the death but failed to test the autopsy samples for fentanyl metabolites. This important test will help determine whether Gregory ingested fentanyl and whether the fentanyl in his body was due to contamination from laboratory testing rather than what he actually ate in. If fentanyl was only detected in the samples and not in Gregory's body, the prosecution's theory that fentanyl caused his death would be incorrect. The appeal also revealed a chain of custody violation regarding the samples. Although the samples were marked and placed in a cardboard box, the containers were not sealed. They were left at the medical examiner's office for approximately 36 hours before being shipped to the sheriff's forensic lab due to the recipient's absence. During this time, the samples were potentially accessible to anyone with a key to the medical examiner's office building, raising concerns that someone may have contaminated the samples. Kristen's appeal contends that any individual with a motive to falsify evidence could have added the substance to the sample. A panel of judges from the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals reviewed Kristen's case and concluded that her lawyers had made a serious error. The prosecution claimed Gregory died of a fentanyl overdose. Kristen's lawyers, however, did not contest that claim. Instead, they accepted the fentanyl overdose explanation. The judges did not overturn the verdict but sent the case back to the lower court to decide whether the defense's error could have changed the outcome of the trial. The U.S. Supreme Court has issued a ruling stating that federal courts must respect the decisions made by state courts in similar cases. This ruling impacts Kristen's case, as the court has voted against a hearing and her appeal was denied, leaving her in custody. Kristen's trial was not the only part of the case. She had a co-defendant named Michael. Although he was not in the U.S. for the trial, he is still a part of the case and risks being arrested if he returns. However, he may be eligible for a $100,000 bail. Michael has been living in Australia, where he works as a forensic toxicologist. Kristen Rossum was arrested in 2003 and received a life sentence without parole. Gregory's family is now suing the county for allowing Kristen to steal a lethal dose of the same drug without detection, and they blame the county's negligence for her crime. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Nathan and Crystal Maddox. Nathan and Crystal Maddox grew up on neighboring streets, fell in love, and later got married when Crystal became pregnant. Despite initial disapproval from Crystal's parents, they eventually accepted the relationship and even let the young couple get married. After their wedding, Nathan and Crystal started a family, having a daughter named Madison. However, their life was far from perfect. Nathan had to work hard to support his family, often traveling to Montana for work. Despite the distance, he remained devoted to his family, regularly sending money and visiting whenever possible. But one day, Nathan returned home from Montana to find his house empty and a note from Crystal saying she was leaving him. She claimed she didn't know where he was or when he would return, which was a lie, as Nathan had been regularly updating her on his whereabouts. The worst part was that she took their daughter Madison with her and even went to the police station, falsely accusing Nathan of neglecting his child in order to gain full custody. Nathan tried to visit his daughter Madison, but her mother's family, the Westfalls, kept pushing him away, relieved to be rid of him. Years passed, and Nathan returned to his hometown to be close to Madison. He didn't give up trying to see her, but he knew he needed a lawyer to get official custody and legal visitation rights. During this time, Nathan met Crystal, an old friend from childhood. They had gone to school together, but their paths diverged when Crystal moved to the city to attend university. However, she got married and started a family instead of pursuing a career. After her divorce, Crystal returned to her hometown with her 4 children. Nathan was immediately drawn to Crystal's energy and optimism. They got married in 2013, and Nathan worked at a warehouse while Crystal started a clothing business and opened a children's boutique. The family was doing well, and they could finally afford a good lawyer to help Nathan get custody of Madison. Madison was thrilled with her father's new family, including Crystal and her siblings. This made Kristen's parents, Lita and Paula Westfall, very resentful and afraid of losing their granddaughter. In 2012, Kristen had applied for full custody of Madison, and the battle dragged on for 2 years. However, Crystal's presence in Nathan's life changed everything. With a stable family and a good job, Nathan was granted visitation rights, and he was ecstatic. In October 2013, the judge allowed supervised visits with Madison. On January 18, 2014, Nathan and Crystal attended a Sunday service at Mount Carmel Church, planning to take Madison for a walk afterwards. But as they left the church, 3 loud shots were heard. Nathan and Crystal were shot and killed, shocking the small town. The police investigation revealed that Nathan and Crystal were shot in the head with a .30 caliber rifle, and Nathan was also shot in the thigh with a 20-gauge shotgun, indicating that there were 2 shooters. The investigation continued, with interviews of witnesses, acquaintances, and relatives, including Kristen's family. The Westfalls' behavior shocked investigators. Instead of grieving Nathan's death, they seemed to be hiding their joy. Paul Westfall even faked a seizure, claiming he was too shocked to believe the news. It was clear they were involved in the murder, but the motive remained unknown. Kristen was the first to be interviewed, and her demeanor was eerily calm, and that despite her long history with Nathan and their shared child. She provided strange details about him, only highlighting the negative aspects of their relationship. Kristen claimed she knew who killed him, mentioning that Nathan had been involved with dangerous motorcycle gangs in Montana. One gang member had even threatened to kill him at his mother's house. Although this story checked out, it turned out to be an empty threat due to a broken motorcycle. As an alibi, Kristen said she was at the grocery store with her father, Paul, on the day of the crime. Surveillance footage confirmed their presence at 10:57 a.m. Paul told the same story, but as a hunter with access to firearms, his hands were tested for gunpowder residue, which came back negative. However, his reaction to Nathan's death seemed suspicious, leaving a sliver of doubt about his sincerity. Further investigation revealed that Nathan was involved in a bitter custody battle with Kristen over their daughter. He was close to gaining custody, which the Westfall family strongly opposed. This desperate battle might have been a motive for the murder, but the police had no concrete evidence to arrest anyone. The family consisted of 4 people, and 2 of them were the shooters. Investigators were yet to figure out who pulled the trigger or if they had hired a killer. Focusing on the key player in the controversy, Madison Maddox, the police decided to act. They removed her from the home, citing safety concerns, and searched the house. The search yielded disturbing results. A gun was easily accessible, and illegal drugs were scattered around the house. In 2013, Kristen was arrested and charged with possessing a controlled substance. Despite this, she continued to live with her parents and daughter, defying court orders. In 2014, Child Protective Services discovered a used syringe with illegal substances and a gun on Kristen's nightstand, leading to Madison being taken into temporary custody. The authorities wanted to place Madison in foster care due to the presence of illegal substances and a gun in the Westfall home. However, there was no direct evidence linking the Westfalls to the Maddox murder, and cross-examinations did not produce the desired results. To pressure the Westfalls, the police focused on 18-year-old Cameron, the most vulnerable family member. They threatened him with life imprisonment for his family and the death penalty for the direct killers if he didn't cooperate. Fearing for his family, Cameron agreed to work with the investigation and revealed the details of the crime. The murder of the young couple, Maddox, was carefully planned by the Westfall family to eliminate Nathan from his role as father. This was due to a bitter custody dispute between Nathan and his ex-wife, Kristen, who had the support of her family. The Westfalls were determined to keep Madison from her father, and when the judge allowed Nathan multiple visitations, it became clear he could win the trial. Kristen and her family plotted a scheme to remove Nathan from Madison's life. They tried to find someone to kill him, but when that failed, Kristen and her father decided to do it themselves. On January 18th, the family attended church, and Kristen and Paul created an alibi by posing as customers at a distant store to get on CCTV cameras. Meanwhile, Lita Westfall, Kristen's mother, attended the church service with Madison and informed Paul of Nathan and Crystal's departure. She called 911 immediately after the murder. Cameron played a role in concealing the evidence, discarding the gun used in the murder near a remote church and at a lake. He later cooperated with authorities, revealing that Kristen came up with the idea and the family went along with it. The police arrested Kristen, her brother Cameron, and her parents, Paul and Letha Westfall, and charged them with organized crime. Kristen and Paul were the ones who pulled the trigger, while Cameron and Lita acted as willing accomplices. Although Lita was at the church during the incident, phone records showed she informed her daughter and husband of the couple's whereabouts. The trial was lengthy, with each member of the Westfall family tried separately. Paul Westfall was initially found mentally unfit, but was later deemed competent and faced the death penalty along with Lita. To avoid the death penalty, they agreed to a plea bargain with the DA's office. Paul Westfall took a plea bargain with the prosecution, pleading guilty to the charges and receiving a life sentence without parole. Lita Westfall, his wife, also took a plea bargain, pleading guilty to organized criminal activity. She will be eligible for parole in 2046 and is currently incarcerated at Mountain View Prison in Gatesville, Texas. Kristen Westphal, the daughter of Paul and Lita, pleaded not guilty to all charges against her, claiming her family was crazy and she was the only sane one. However, when her family members testified against her in court, she was unable to respond. The motive behind the murder of Nathan and Crystal Maddox was revealed to be custody of their 5-year-old daughter, Madison. Kristen did not want Nathan to have unrestricted access to Madison and wanted to control her father's communication with the child. The trial took over a week, and with overwhelming evidence against her, the jury found her guilty of capital murder in just 8 hours. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Cameron Westphal, the youngest member of the family, was charged with 2 counts of tampering with evidence. He pleaded guilty and received a deferred sentence, contingent upon him testifying against his family. He faced up to 10 years in prison on each charge. Although he claimed to have had no involvement in the actual shooting, phone records showed that his mother had texted her husband and daughter during the crime. Cameron is currently incarcerated at the Huntsville Correctional Facility in Texas and is expected to be released in 2025. The case was highly publicized and shook the community of Colmsnale, Texas, to its core. The Westphal family's brutal crime was committed outside Mount Carmel Baptist Church, where Nathan and Crystal Maddox were shot and killed in 2014. In 2016, a judge sentenced Cameron to 10 years in prison, and his mother received a life sentence the following year. Lloyd Paul was also sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty to first-degree murder, which meant he could not appeal his sentence. Kristen Westphal, the mastermind behind the crime, received a life sentence without parole. The legal battle for custody of Madison Maddox, Kristen's daughter, continued even after the Westphal family was sentenced. Nathan Maddox's father, Jim, filed a petition to become the primary guardian of his granddaughter. It's worth noting that many people die in custody battles every year, and instead of making children happier, these battles often leave them with psychological problems. The Westphal family, who were devout churchgoers, were willing to kill to achieve their goals, hiding behind their concern for Madison. Nathan, Madison's father, was not a bad person and loved his daughter. However, his ex-wife Kristen was filled with hatred towards him, particularly because he had started a new family and found happiness with his new partner, Crystal. Kristen was able to manipulate her family against Nathan, leading to the tragic events that unfolded. The custody dispute started before Nathan and Crystal's relationship, and in the end, there is only one loser, Madison. Hopefully, when she grows up, she will not remember the selfishness of the adults who used her for their own gain, claiming to act out of love. If they truly loved her, they would have worked to build a normal relationship for her sake, rather than pursuing their own interests. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Matthew Phelps. Lauren and Matt Phelps first met in middle school, but they didn't become close friends back then. Years later, when they were both 26, Matt reached out to Lauren on Instagram, sparking an unexpected reconnection. Lauren accepted his request and started following him back. Curious, Matt checked out Lauren's page and found himself liking every post he saw. There was something about her that drew him in. As they started talking and texting daily, Lauren and Matt discovered they shared many common interests, including a love for Harry Potter, Star Wars, and other geeky stuff. Their conversations were filled with laughter and excitement, and their friendship quickly grew into something more. One of the things Lauren found particularly appealing about Matt was his strong faith. Having grown up in a Christian household, Lauren valued her relationship with God, and she was relieved to find that Matt felt the same way. Their shared beliefs and values brought her comfort and peace. To the outside world, Lauren and Matt seemed like the perfect couple, deeply in love and filled with joy and happiness. Everyone around them thought they had found their soulmates, and it was only a matter of time before Matt proposed to Lauren. However, Lauren's father was not convinced. He had always been protective of his daughter and was worried about her well-being and safety. The thought of her marrying someone he barely knew filled him with concern. After the engagement, their loved ones threw a party to celebrate the exciting news. Lauren was over the moon and wore a stunning white dress. But things took an unexpected turn when Matt's mother arrived, also wearing white. It was clear that she was not happy about her son's decision to marry Lauren, and her actions were seen as an apparent act of disrespect towards her. Lauren's frustration and disappointment boiled over after the engagement party, prompting her to confront Matt about his mother's behavior. When she approached him, Matt downplayed her concerns, explaining that he was raised by his grandparents, not his parents. He further revealed that he didn't have a great relationship with his mother and that her opinions held little significance for him. After getting engaged, Lauren and Matt decided to move to Raleigh, North Carolina in 2016. Despite the move, they remained committed to their Christian values and continued to live a life guided by their faith. Matt worked hard at an in-home care company, earning him the Employee of the Month award, which made Lauren extremely proud of his dedication. Lauren was also a hard worker, often taking on up to 4 part-time jobs in addition to her full-time job at a Fortune 500 company, all in an effort to support their life together. She even contributed to their financial stability by babysitting and working in the church nursery, taking care of children while their parents attended services. Moreover, Lauren had a side business selling candles, an entrepreneurial venture that allowed her to explore various opportunities and pursue her dream of owning her own business, which would give her financial freedom and the chance to create something meaningful. Every Tuesday, Lauren and Matt would visit her parents' house for a game night, an event they both eagerly anticipated. Matt would always arrive on time, enthusiastic about spending quality time with Lauren's family and building connections with them. In November 2016, Lauren and Matt tied the knot in a joyful wedding ceremony in Wake Forest, North Carolina. Their special day was filled with laughter and a touch of their shared love for all things nerdy. A memorable aspect of the wedding was the incorporation of their nerdy passions. The groomsmen wore dapper suits and carried lightsabers, transforming the celebration into a Star Wars-themed extravaganza. After Matt and Lauren got married, problems started to emerge in their relationship. Matt became uneasy about Lauren's close friendship with a male friend from their church. He suspected that the friend had romantic feelings for Lauren and thought their friendship was too intimate. Lauren tried to reassure Matt that she had no feelings for the man and was committed to their marriage. Matt's trust issues stemmed from his past experiences in his first marriage. He confided that his previous spouse had cheated on him while on a mission trip, and when she returned home, she told him she never loved him and was leaving him. The betrayal and abandonment had a lasting impact on Matt, leaving him deeply hurt and struggling to cope for a long time. As their marriage progressed, Matt's unhappiness grew. He transformed from a happy and content person to someone darker and more depressed. It was clear that something was troubling him deeply. Around this time, Matt's attitude towards his faith began to change. He became distant and unhappy about attending church services with Lauren, which was a significant concern for her since her faith was central to her life. Lauren felt frustrated that Matt seemed to dismiss everything she held dear. It was as if his love and appreciation had vanished, leaving a gaping hole in their relationship. Lauren yearned for a deeper emotional bond with her husband, founded on shared values and interests, but Matt appeared indifferent. Matt's newly developed laziness irritated Lauren, who was working multiple jobs to support them. His habit of finding a job, working briefly, and then suddenly quitting became a repetitive issue that caused Lauren immense frustration. What particularly upset her was that Matt was recklessly spending their money, leaving her struggling to replenish it. Lauren and Matt's friends and family tried to help him overcome his depression, but their efforts were met with indifference. Instead of seeking help or engaging in productive activities, Matt would spend hours on end playing video games, fixated on the TV screen. This behavior threatened their financial security and strained their relationship. Lauren sought support from her mother and sister due to Matt's unusual behavior. She confided in them about her exhaustion from working 4 jobs and her disappointment in coming home to a messy house, pending laundry, and unprepared meals. Meanwhile, Matt prioritized playing video games and spending their money, leaving Lauren feeling neglected and overwhelmed. Despite their growing distance and Matt's strange behavior, Lauren remained committed to her marriage and was determined to make it work. Her dedication was evident in her decision to stay by Matt's side despite their challenges. She believed their marriage was worth saving. As Lauren and Matt approached their 4-month wedding anniversary, their relationship was more strained than ever. Matt's decision to skip Tuesday night game night at Lauren's family house raised concerns. This intentional absence hurt Lauren and her family, who saw it as a disrespect towards them. Lauren felt distant from Matt and knew things needed to change. She had expressed her feelings and concerns, but it seemed Matt wasn't listening or didn't care. Lauren was worried that she and her husband Matt were growing apart, and she was determined not to let their love fade away. At this point, Lauren was desperate to salvage their marriage and was willing to try anything to make it succeed. When Matt suggested they take a road trip to Bowling Green, Kentucky, to visit his family, Lauren agreed, thinking that some quality time together could help repair their troubled relationship and bring back the closeness they once shared. When Lauren and Matt arrived in Bowling Green, Kentucky, they were greeted with an unexpected surprise. They had decided to take the trip with Matt's mother, her husband, and his parents. However, things didn't go as planned. Despite traveling together, Matt's mother still had not warmed up to Lauren and continued to give her a cold reception. Throughout the trip, Matt's mother maintained a frosty attitude, creating tension among the group. As the trip progressed, Matt's mother organized a family photo shoot and invited Lauren to join in. Lauren was thrilled to be included in an activity by her mother-in-law, hoping this would mark a turning point in their relationship. A few days before the photo shoot, Matt's mother sent Lauren a text, informing her that everyone would be wearing blue. Eager to follow the instructions, Lauren went out and bought 2 new blue outfits, one for herself and one for Matt. She was looking forward to wearing the outfit she had chosen and being part of the photo shoot. When Lauren and Matt arrived at the designated location, they found that everyone except themselves was wearing white. Confused and disappointed, Lauren asked Matt's mother for an explanation. However, instead of admitting her mistake, Matt's mother became upset with Lauren, making it seem as though Lauren had chosen to wear blue on purpose. Lauren tried to explain that she had followed the instructions and bought blue outfits accordingly, but Matt's mother continued to escalate the situation, eventually canceling the photo shoot. Upon their return from Bowling Green, Kentucky, Lauren and Matt's relationship continued to deteriorate. Matt began spending more time alone, writing in his journals, and displaying increasingly peculiar behavior. Lauren grew worried about these changes in Matt's demeanor. She started to suspect that Matt was stealing money from the fund they had set aside for their future trip to Disney World. Her suspicions deepened when she discovered that Matt might have taken money from her purse without her knowledge. Lauren frequently called her mother in tears, suspecting Matt of stealing from their vacation fund and her purse. In one of these conversations, Lauren confided in her mother that she only had enough money to cover the bills for a month and was unsure how they would cope afterwards. This realization filled Lauren with anxiety and fear, as she knew they were facing a significant financial crisis. When they started their life together, Lauren and Matt had $10,000 in savings, which they believed would provide a secure foundation for their future. However, just a year later, they found themselves struggling financially. Despite their initial optimism, their savings had dwindled significantly due to Matt's excessive spending. One evening, after a long day at work, Lauren texted Matt about their dinner plans. During their conversation, she mentioned that a female coworker had visited their house earlier that day, which sparked concern in Lauren, given the strained state of her marriage to Matt. Lauren couldn't help but wonder if she should be worried that a woman had sought out her husband at their home, and this unease grew as she thought about the truth behind Matt's first marriage. Her curiosity and desire to uncover the truth drove her to investigate further. Matt and his first wife, Brooke, had met in college and dated for 2 years before getting married. Although Brooke forgave Matt after he confessed to kissing another girl early in their relationship, she later revealed that he had cheated on her again right before their wedding. Despite this, Brooke forgave Matt again and married him. Matt and Brooke's marriage rapidly deteriorated after they tied the knot. A major point of contention was Matt's spending habits, which Brooke claimed were beyond their means. Meanwhile, she worked 40 hours a week to support them financially. The prolonged stress of their marriage took a significant toll on Matt and Brooke, causing them to become emotionally detached and slowly drift apart. Ultimately, their union ended in divorce. Lauren dropped a bombshell on her parents. It was Matt who had cheated in his first marriage. Her family was consumed by anger and a sense of betrayal, fearing what Lauren's fiercely protective father might do to Matt if they revealed the truth. So they kept the news to themselves, remaining silent. As Lauren and Matt's marriage continued to unravel, Lauren's frustration with her husband grew dramatically. The discovery of yet another betrayal left their already fragile trust in tatters. Just when Lauren thought she could start rebuilding her faith in their marriage, she discovered Matt had again broken her trust, this time over their finances. On their latest credit card statement, she found he had blown $11,200 on video games and another $100 on gift cards without her knowledge or consent. These reckless purchases only deepened her frustration and fueled her doubts about Matt's commitment to their marriage. Despite Matt's repeated betrayals, Lauren was resolute in saving her marriage. To her, divorce was unthinkable, and she was prepared to do whatever it took to make things work. To address Matt's extravagant spending, Lauren planned an intervention with her mother and sister to confront him and develop a budget plan together. At the intervention, Matt seemed receptive and genuinely willing to make amends and correct their financial issues. He appeared committed to making positive changes in their marriage. However, on August 31, 2017, the woman Matt used to work with unexpectedly showed up at their doorstep. Lauren was taken aback and upset. Matt told Lauren he was leaving with this woman, claiming she needed his help with something. Lauren was enraged and began sending frantic texts and calls, but Matt ignored her, refusing to respond. Lauren was furious and confided in her sister, venting her frustrations about Matt, whom she believed was ruining her life. She declared that their relationship was over and mentioned that she had already told Matt about her decision to end it on the early morning of September 1, 2017. Matt Phelps made a frantic 911 call, informing the dispatcher that he thought he had killed his wife. He explained that he had a dream, woke up and found her dead on the floor, with blood all over him and a bloody knife on the bed. Matt sounded terrified, panicked, and unsure of himself, his voice filled with shock and guilt as he spoke to the dispatcher. Matt explained that he suspected he might have killed his wife, attributing it to the quercetin cough and cold medicine he had taken, possibly in excess. He had taken the medication to relieve his symptoms and help him sleep better at night, as he knew it was effective. Quercetin is an over-the-counter medication typically used to alleviate common cold and flu symptoms, comprising a combination of antihistamines, decongestants, and pain relievers that ease nasal congestion, cough, and sore throat. However, It's notable that quercetin can cause side effects such as drowsiness, dizziness, and confusion, particularly when consumed in large quantities or combined with other medications. Matt had just called 911 to report that he had killed his wife when the Raleigh Police Department arrived at their home. The officers found him standing on the front steps and promptly took him into custody to ensure his safety and security. Upon entering the house, they were met with a horrifying scene in the master bedroom. Lauren's lifeless body was found curled up in the fetal position on the bedroom floor, surrounded by a gruesome scene of blood splattered all over the carpet, walls, comforter, and bed. The sheer amount of blood and the sight of Lauren's lifeless body created a deeply disturbing picture, one that would be unsettling even for the most experienced police officers. Crime scene investigators arrived at the house to start collecting evidence. They thoroughly examined every area, searching for clues to understand what happened that night. The team documented the scene, taking photos, collecting samples, and gathering physical items related to the crime. While investigators searched Matt and Lauren's house for evidence, police officers had the difficult task of informing Lauren's family of her death. After Lauren's sister heard the news that Laura had been killed by her husband, she was jolted awake by the sound of her mother's loud, horrified screams. Rushing downstairs, she reached the bottom to find police officers standing at the front door, confirming her worst fears: Laura was dead. At the police station, the officers questioned Matt about his role in the murder of his wife. However, Matt soon asked for an attorney, and the questioning stopped. Following his request, the police took Matt to the hospital to have a blood test, which would determine if he had used quercetin at the time of the murder. Following his blood test, Matt was taken into custody at the county jail, where he was formally charged with murder. In the aftermath of Matt's arrest, the police launched a thorough investigation into his journals and electronic devices, seeking any additional evidence that might shed light on his motivations for killing his wife. Officers found a disturbing pattern in Matthew's internet history before Lauren's death. He'd researched cocaine and its mix with alcohol. They also discovered a secret Instagram account glorifying death, the devil, and American Psycho, with violent anti-Christian posts contradicting his aspiring pastor persona. Matt's toxicology report showed that he had a small amount of cold medication in his system, but not enough to cause hallucinations. This finding supported the idea that Matt was in control of his actions and not under the influence of any substances when Lauren died. Lauren's autopsy revealed that she was asleep on her side when Matt stabbed her. He initially stabbed her on her side, then rolled her over and stabbed her multiple times in the face. The autopsy also found that Lauren tried to fight back, with wounds on her arms suggesting she attempted to defend herself. In total, she suffered 123 stab wounds. On October 5, 2018, Matthew Phelps pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in the death of his wife Lauren. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. During the sentencing hearing, Phelps apologized to his former in-laws, calling himself a monster and acknowledging that his actions were senseless and unjustified. Lauren's mother told the court that Lauren was beautiful inside and out, and that Matthew Phelps' actions had forever changed her life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. On January 28, 2018, at 8 p.m., a car was parked outside an apartment complex. A young blonde-haired girl got out and walked briskly toward the house. She was returning from work, carrying a bag of food from her favorite fast food restaurant and the keys to her apartment. As she approached the door, she was surprised to find that the key did not fit into the lock. Hurriedly, she decided to check each key on her metal ring, but none of them fit. Suddenly, she remembered giving her key to her brother and reopened her purse in search of a spare key. When she found it and successfully opened the door, an unfamiliar voice called her name. Startled, she turned around only to be grabbed by a large male figure who carried her into the apartment with confident assertiveness. The door slammed shut behind them. The next day, on January 29, 2018, staff members at Shaw Davis Funeral Home were concerned due to Rachel's unexplained absence from work. Known for being responsible and dedicated to her duties, Rachel's lack of response to phone calls worried them. The head of the office asked a delivery colleague to go check on Rachel at her apartment. Upon reaching Rachel's apartment, no one answered his knock or call. He then contacted the apartment complex manager. However, they could not gain access without tenant permission. Concerned for Rachel's safety, the colleague decided to involve law enforcement. When police entered Rachel's apartment, they found nothing alarming or unusual except for leftover food on the table, a stark contrast given Rachel's known love for orderliness and habit of storing food properly in the refrigerator. This notable detail caught her co-workers' immediate attention and further deepened their concern about what might have happened to Rachel. He insisted on a more thorough inspection of the apartment, with police officers present. During the examination of the bedroom, he attempted to check the closet. However, when he tried to open the door, he felt something was amiss. With effort, he yanked the closet door open and let out in there was Rachel's bloody body. Officer Frank Scanny immediately called forensics, and the apartment complex area was quickly cordoned off. In her own apartment, Rachel Anderson's bound body was found inside a bedroom closet. She was stripped to the waist, partially wrapped in a blanket. Her head was enclosed in a shirt and a black piece of clothing tied around her neck, with part of it stuffed into her mouth as a gag. The victim, identified as 24-year-old Rachel Anderson, had suffered greatly. Rachel Nicoletta Anderson was born on January 28, 1994, in Warren, Ohio. She had a younger brother named John, who was adored by the family. Graduating from Warren Harding High School in 2012, where she excelled academically and athletically, Rachel chose an unusual profession that fascinated her since childhood. Dreaming of becoming a funeral director, she studied at Youngstown State University with a focus on mortuary science. Her dedication led her to be among the top students, and she received a scholarship for her efforts. Later, she attended Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science and graduated in 2016 with a Bachelor of Science in Mortuary Science. Becoming a member of the Ohio Funeral Directors Association solidified her career path. Rachel moved to Columbus for an internship at Shaw Davis Funeral Home, where she took her work very seriously. Helping families during their most difficult times meant everything to her. As Rachel's internship neared its conclusion, she looked forward to becoming a permanent staff member. Tragically, though, these aspirations were brutally snatched away. Rachel's body was transported to the morgue as investigators began interviewing witnesses right away. The autopsy performed revealed disturbing details about the horrific events leading up to her death. That night, the young woman endured unimaginable suffering. She was both strangled and stabbed. The incident left her with a laceration on her scalp and multiple fractures at the base of her skull. A particularly vicious stab wound penetrated the back of her neck, reaching the left hemisphere of her brain. Rachel was stabbed with such force, a fragment of skull broke off. Autopsy also disclosed she had been stranged using an electric blanket. Consequently, she experienced haging in her sternocomastoid muscles and eyelids, blood to fill in her eyes. Additionally, forensic analysis showed bruises and red marks on her ankles and wrists, confirming that she was alive when tied up. DNA evidence was found on both the rope and Rachel's body. The coroner concluded that the cause of death was indeed a stab wound to the head and neck, even though initial theories pointed towards strangulation. Following several interviews with Rachel's co-workers and ex-boyfriend, who had an alibi, police continued investigating various angles of the attack. Detectives revisited the victim's apartment for further searches, hoping to find clues or traces that could solve the case. On the living room floor lay Rachel's purse. However, it was missing. The 9-inch steak knife used in the attack was discovered by Rachel's mother 2 weeks later in a box within the apartment. This led detectives to their first theory: robbery. However, the sheer brutality suggested that this wasn't just a simple robbery, but rather an act committed by a sadistic individual reveling in exerting control over his victim. Investigators examined multiple motives, but lacked solid suspects initially, keeping details about Rachel's death confidential to preserve investigative integrity. Over time, DNA samples were retrieved from various parts of Rachel's body and crime scene, but unfortunately didn't match any entries in special services databases. Surveillance footage captured two individuals using Rachel's car to traverse the city. During this period, cash withdrawals were made from Rachel's debit and credit cards. Location services data identified a phone number that had been present in Rachel Anderson's apartment between 7:59 p.m. and 9:25 p.m., providing another potential lead for investigators to pursue. On January 28, 2018, by diligently examining the gathered evidence, it became evident where the caller was located at various times. After identifying the account through the phone number uncovered, investigators were able to pinpoint the suspect. He was identified as 54-year-old Anthony Perron, a recidivist, violent criminal and rapist, with a history marred by numerous offenses. Before committing the murder of Rachel Anderson, his criminal activities included multiple rapes, robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Cumulatively, he spent 33 years in prison for these crimes. Anthony Perron's life was marked by turmoil from a young age. Initially raised by his grandparents before living with his mother, he exhibited significant behavioral issues. As a child, he was diagnosed with conduct disorder and antisocial personality disorder due to ongoing social problems. In March 1979, at the age of 14, Anthony was temporarily committed to the Ohio Youth Commission. By July of that year, he was placed in the custody of the court and transferred to Franklin County Children's Services temporarily. Again, in December of that year, he faced charges for making threats and was sent back to the Ohio Youth Commission before being placed in foster care. In 1980, Anthony Perron faced charges of abuse. The victim was his foster parents' son. At just 15 years old, when he committed this crime while babysitting for his foster mother who had gone shopping, Perron later confessed to Columbus police that he acted out of anger following an argument with his girlfriend. As a juvenile offender on November 13, 1981, at just 16, Perron manipulated circumstances to gain entry into his girlfriend's mother's home under the pretense of using her telephone. Once inside, wielding a butcher knife on her, he assaulted her and stole $100 from her purse. He subsequently bound her hands and feet and gagged her before placing her in his car's trunk. He drove her to Valleydale, where he untied her feet briefly before throwing her into the river. Despite being partially clothed at that time, she managed to stay afloat, which appeared unexpected to him. He waded into the creek and submerged her head underwater. The woman survived thanks to the intervention of a passerby who scared Anthony away. The boy then fled before the police arrived and used the money he stole from the victim to buy tennis shoes and jogging uniforms. In May 1982, at age 17, he was convicted of other in Franklin. He was sentenced to imprisonment ranging from 5 to 25 years. While in prison, he committed several disciplinary offenses, including possession of a weapon, burning a mattress, and fighting. He eventually spent over 24 years behind bars for his crimes and was released in November 2006. Upon gaining his freedom, Anthony Perron moved to Georgia and applied for a job under an assumed name. However, in 2007, he was charged with forgery and again convicted in Floyd County, where he spent another 9 years in prison. Additionally, he received 20 years probation and was required to wear a GPS tracker on his ankle. In 2017, Perron was released from prison once more, returning to Ohio that June under an interstate agreement between Ohio and Georgia. He was monitored by the Adult Parole Authority and had to check in with the Sheriff's Department every 90 days. Despite the judge's request for a monitor due to the length of supervision and budget concerns, state authorities did not provide one. A former criminal thus walked free again due to budget savings and state negligence. On August 21, 2017, Poston was caught with a girl of questionable repute in his car. Just 6 days later, he was found driving without a license, during which stop he also had a kitchen knife and a shotgun in his possession. Strangely or negligently again, he wasn't arrested. The perpetrator's activities continued unabatedly. CCTV footage shows Rachel's car stopped outside a store. A man got out of the passenger side and entered the store, while the driver remained unseen on camera, which added complications for identification. Police interviews with store employees led them to identify the man as local vagrant Anthony Slits. Slits was questioned at the station a few days later. He revealed that he had been approached by an older man who offered him cash to use his ex-girlfriend's cards. Thus became co-conspirator in Rachel Anderson's case. Anthony Slits confirmed identifying Anthony Poston and detailed their route taken on January 28, 2018, when they attempted to cash out Rachel's stolen cards. The matter remained unresolved until they could find and apprehend Anthony Poston himself. On February 9, 2018, a prolonged stakeout at Anthony Poston's sister's house led to his arrest. The 54-year-old repeat offender faced 9 charges, including aggravated burglary, aggravated robbery, kidnapping, rape, and aggravated murder. His trial began on February 4, 2020. 4 witnesses testified on the first day. Rachel Anderson's co-worker Jonathan Kennedy, who found her body, Jonathan, the manager of her apartment complex, and Officer Frank Zagani, who saw the surveillance tape while in his car outside the apartment when Kennedy made the discovery. Rachel's brother John and Special Agent Joshua Durst testified on February 5th. The lead detective Art Hughes took the stand on February 6. That same day, Poston expressed dissatisfaction with his attorneys to the judge and requested new representation. It seemed he was deliberately stalling. On Monday, February 10th, prosecutors introduced a latent print expert alongside other specialists. They detailed how technology helped trace where Rachel Anderson's debit card had been used and linked it to the crime scene. Additionally, Poston's sister disclosed that he had given her Rachel's debit card, claiming it belonged to his girlfriend. She later realized from TV news that it was connected to the crime victim. The final day of testimony occurred on Tuesday, February 11th. The medical examiner confirmed that Poston's DNA was present at the scene. A forensic pathologist and a deputy coroner from Franklin County elaborated on Rachel Anderson's injuries. In court, they reconstructed a detailed timeline of Rachel Anderson's final days. She celebrated her 24th birthday on January 26th and January 27th in 2018. Her brother John traveled from Warren to Columbus to visit her during this time. The following day, she and her brother journeyed to the residence of her friend and colleague, John Kennedy. There, friends organized a party to celebrate Rachel's birthday. After an extended celebration, Rachel and her brother decided to spend the night at their friend's home. The next morning, Rachel headed to work, leaving her apartment key with her brother. On the 28th, John Anderson returned to his hometown and inadvertently took the key along. Around 1 p.m., Rachel texted John Kennedy, who had a spare key to her house, to retrieve it. She mentioned she would stop by his place to pick it up. At approximately 6:30 p.m., Rachel spoke with her mother before collecting the key from Kennedy. Since the apartment door could only be locked from the outside with a key, Anderson had to leave it unlocked. Rachel then stopped for dinner at her favorite restaurant, arriving back at her apartment around 7:30 p.m. Upon reaching home, Poston was waiting for her outside the building. He abducted Rachel and took her from the ground floor up to the top floor of the complex. Using excessive force, he restrained her by binding her feet with a hairdryer cord and securing her hands with cords from blinds and a belt. Once immobilized, he wrapped a curling iron cord around her wrists to prevent any outcry. To further silence Rachel, he gagged her. The assailant coerced Rachel into revealing her bank card pins. Subsequently, he subjected her to further torment and exploitation before ultimately strangling her using an electric blanket cord in cold blood. He inflicted additional blunt force trauma along with a stab wound to her head. Afterward, he concealed Rachel's body in a closet, leaving it undressed below the waist and with the electric blanket cord tied around both her neck and door handle. The perpetrator then stole Rachel's car and misused all of her bank cards at various stores in Columbus for quick monetary gain. The final hearing took place on February 12th. Assistant Prosecutor Amy Van Keulen presented the state's initial closing argument, laying out a timeline of the crime and asserting that Parton had brutally murdered Rachel Anderson. In his closing argument, defendant's attorney Larry Thomas admitted Parton used the victim's cards, but maintained that he wasn't responsible for the crime. Thomas argued that the state's case was based on speculation and that DNA and cell phone evidence did not conclusively link Parton to the crime. The jury, comprised of 4 men and 8 women, deliberated for about 6 hours over 2 days before convicting him on all counts. The prosecution sought the death penalty due to Rachel Anderson's murder occurring during an aggravated burglary and because of Parton's prior conviction for a similar attempted murder. Given his extensive criminal history, they argued against clemency. Prosecutor O'Brien stated some individuals simply cannot abide by the law, emphasizing that Anthony Parton is one such person. The sentencing phase began on February 18th. The defense aimed to mitigate aggravating factors by highlighting Parton's troubled childhood to both the court and jury. Despite their efforts, prosecutors contended that the aggravating circumstances far outweighed any mitigating factors, and it was evidenced in trial that Anthony knew exactly what he was doing during his attack on Rachel. Parton's mother and sister, along with a psychologist and his former elementary school teacher, testified in his defense. On February 19th, Anthony delivered a 13-minute unscripted statement to the jury detailing his abusive childhood and post-prison struggles. He described feelings of hardship and helplessness, claiming systemic failures contributed to his situation. In his final remarks, he blamed the justice system for shaping who he is today. Notably, he did not specifically address the crime or offer an apology during his statement. On February 20th, following 3.5 hours of deliberation, the jury couldn't decide on whether to recommend the death penalty. Instead, they suggested life in prison without parole. Sentencing place on March 16, 2020. Rachel Anderson's mother cried openly in court when the verdict was read. Her father released a statement reflecting on the investigation over the past few years. He expressed his shock at the behavior of a violent criminal and repeat offender who made demands and became hysterical as if he was owed something. The father was astounded by a grown man complaining that the system had failed him, attempting to shirk any responsibility for his actions. In his final words, Rachel Anderson's father acknowledged that while the system has its flaws, it failed his daughter in this particular instance. Judge McIntosh sentenced Anthony Parton to 1 life sentence without parole for aggravated murder and another life sentence without parole for violence. Additionally, Anthony Parton received an extra 63 years in prison for aggravated burglary, kidnapping, and aggravated robbery, along with multiple violent offenses. This grim outcome marked what would have been Rachel Anderson's 24th birthday. A young woman with her future ahead of her had her life tragically cut short. She was nearing the end of her internship and was about to receive a promising job offer. Rachel now rests at Pineview Memorial Park. Her family and friends are struggling with this sudden loss. Every year on January 28th, loved ones light candles in their homes to remember a smiling Rachel. To know Rachel was to love her. She had a beautiful soul and would go out of her way for her friends. Throughout her life, she pursued many hobbies but placed great importance on her career. Rachel possessed a gift of compassion. She loved dancing, being around family and friends, and children. She cherished life until it was taken from her. In May 2020, amidst the warmth of spring, Grace Holland found herself engulfed in an inferno of despair. In a frantic and hysterical state, she clutched the cold steel of a gun, her reflection in the dim bathroom mirror mirroring the turmoil within her soul. The Holland family, paralyzed by fear, dared not reach out for help as the specter of Robert, Grace's husband, cast a long shadow over their tragedy. In June 2020, the nightmare intensified as Robert launched a brutal attack on Grace in the confines of their home. Ripping at her clothes and delivering vicious blows, he left behind a mosaic of bruises, silent testimony to his cruelty. Grace, trapped like a bird in a cage, yearned for escape, but found her efforts futile. Desperate, she documented the evidence of her suffering, capturing haunting images of her bruised body. In a moment of sheer desperation, she reached out to her mother, only to be met with Robert's chilling threats, dismissing her cries for help as madness. Each word uttered by Robert pierced through the heart of Grace's mother, a painful reminder of her daughter's torment. How much longer could Grace endure this living nightmare? How could she break free from the suffocating grip of this hellish existence? Grace's narrative transcends mere tragedy. It echoes the anguished plea of a soul trapped in despair, a desperate cry for aid amidst the engulfing darkness. Born on September 23, 1984, in the serene town of Creve, Missouri, Grace Holland was nurtured in the embrace of a loving and supportive family. Alongside her twin sister Laura and another sibling, she traversed the pathways of childhood, exploring, dreaming, and cherishing the bonds of kinship. Her education in a Catholic school instilled in her a sense of discipline, while her pursuit of a degree in criminal justice fueled her passion for upholding the principles of law and order. Grace's innate sense of purpose and responsibility guided her path, leading her to embrace a career dedicated to serving and safeguarding others. Following her graduation, Grace embarked on a journey marked by marriage and motherhood, the arrival of 4 children becoming the focal point of her existence. With boundless love and unwavering devotion, Grace embraced the role of motherhood, delighting in the opportunity to nurture and shape the lives of her offspring. Proudly sharing snapshots of her cherished children with all who crossed her path, she reveled in the joys of parenthood, cherishing each precious moment spent in their company. In 2015, Grace's life underwent a profound transformation when she crossed paths with Robert Deus, the esteemed head of the Maryland County Fire Department. His valiant profession and heroic demeanor immediately captured her attention, igniting a whirlwind of emotions between them. Grace was drawn to Robert's striking blend of bravery, intellect, and compassion, while he, in turn, was captivated by her beauty, intelligence, and unwavering kindness. Yet, behind Robert's impeccable facade lay the shadow of a tumultuous past. His brother David, a former St. Louis police officer, had been embroiled in a grave scandal in 1998, casting a pall over the family's reputation and irrevocably altering David's trajectory. Nearly 2 decades later, David's untimely demise left behind a trail of unanswered questions and concealed secrets, shrouding the family in further turmoil. Robert's narrative became intricately intertwined with the legacy of his brother David. David's influence as a respected law enforcement officer had not only shaped Robert's career, but also facilitated his ascent up the ranks of the profession. The echoes of David's past reverberated through Robert's present, underscoring the complexity of familial bonds and the enduring impact of past events on the trajectory of one's life. Alongside his duties in the fire department, Robert held the position of deputy president at Liberty Arts Works, a family-owned company specializing in crafting memorials for fallen military personnel, firefighters, and police officers. This endeavor, coupled with his active involvement in initiatives supporting first responder services through organizations like Backstoppers, significantly bolstered Robert's standing within professional circles. Although Robert had a child from his previous marriage, which didn't yield the desired happiness, he embarked on a new marital journey with Grace, a detective in the Maryland police force. This union not only enhanced his influence in law enforcement, but also symbolized a fresh start for both of them. With fervor, they set about building their shared future, investing in a new home that epitomized their unity. Yet, beneath the veneer of success, cracks began to emerge. Despite Robert's thriving career and seemingly idyllic personal life, the specter of his brother's past transgressions cast a shadow over his own reputation, raising doubts about his integrity. Moreover, undisclosed issues surfaced within his marriage to Grace, gradually unraveling the facade of their picture-perfect union. Laura, Grace's twin sister, offered insight into the tumultuous nature of their relationship, likening it to a roller coaster ride, marred by alternating bouts of tranquility and explosive arguments. According to Laura, Robert exerted undue control over Grace's life, dictating her actions and relationships, thereby straining their once promising bond. The dissolution of Grace's friendship, under Robert's influence, served as a poignant testament to the cracks forming in their relationship. Laura's revelation about Grace's severed friendship with her best friend, following a dinner attended by Robert, added another layer of mystery to the unraveling saga. The exact reason behind the breakup remained shrouded in ambiguity, deepening Grace's sense of isolation from her support network. According to Laura, Grace confided that Robert coerced her into resigning from her job and joining the family business. Despite the absence of official documentation regarding her employment, the family insisted that Robert compelled the company to provide financial support to Grace without formal records. This arrangement, fraught with opacity, exacerbated Grace's vulnerability. Amidst these tumultuous circumstances, Grace discovered she was pregnant with Robert's child. Rather than elation, this news intensified the strain on their relationship. Court records, presented by the Holland family during the trial, laid bare the stark contrast in their aspirations. While Grace expressed a desire to keep the child and salvage their relationship, Robert advocated for termination. Shockingly, court materials revealed Robert's offer to pay Grace $1,600 for an abortion, underscoring his eagerness to rid himself of paternal responsibilities. The summer of 2020 in Missouri bore witness to a tragedy that shook the community to its core: the untimely demise of 30-year-old Grace Holland. What began as a promising engagement with Robert Dace Jr., the fire department chief, swiftly transformed into a harrowing loss, leaving an indelible scar on the hearts of her loved ones. The circumstances surrounding Grace's death, veiled in mystery, plunged her family and the St. Louis police into a realm of uncertainty. As official explanations remained elusive, skepticism flourished, fueled by the deafening silence from authorities. Grace's mother found herself unjustly under the weight of suspicion, fueling the family's resolve to unearth the truth. Initially, progress in the investigation languished, prompting the family to initiate legal action and unearth evidence independently. Grace Holland's case transcended state lines, capturing national attention as a pivotal moment demanding justice. On October 29, 2021, Laura Holland, Grace's sister, penned a poignant letter shared on the police department's Facebook page. In it, she recounted Grace's harrowing ordeal, haunted by the specter of Robert's erratic and aggressive conduct, as she desperately sought refuge from the Maryland Fire Department. On June 24, 2020, amidst the turmoil of their tumultuous relationship, Grace clandestinely recorded one of their heated arguments with her husband. This recording, later shared with Laura, served as damning evidence of their abusive dynamic. In the audio, Robert unleashed a torrent of insults at Grace, callously expressing his disdain for their union while hypocritically insisting on spending nights at their shared residence. He derided Grace, mocking her perceived idleness and contrasting it with his own toil. Despite Grace's feeble attempts to placate the raging tyrant and profess her love, her words only stoked Robert's fury. Ultimately, he abandoned her, leaving her to grapple with profound loneliness and soul-wrenching anguish. Then, on July 20th, a terse message from Robert pierced the silence. "I want you to leave me alone. I can't stand the thought of you sleeping in my house. I despise you." Yet, less than 24 hours later, on July 21st, a seemingly serene snapshot captured Grace and Robert lying together on the bed in their newly acquired home. Both wore smiles, with Grace seemingly striving to bury the strife of the previous night. Only 7 hours separated this moment of tranquil facade from an impending nightmare. In a cruel twist of fate, within that brief span, Grace Holland's delicate happiness would unravel into an irreversible tragedy. On July 23, 2020, a deceptive tranquility settled over Grace and Robert's tumultuous relationship. It was a deceptive calm before the storm, the ominous quiet before the thunder that would forever alter their lives. At 11:53 p.m., Robert Dace Jr., his voice trembling with anguish, dialed the emergency services. "My fiancée shot herself," he sobbed, his emotions uncontainable. In the ensuing moments, time seemed to slow to a crawl. The wail of ambulance sirens shattered the night's silence as medics rushed into the house. There, they found Grace, lifeless. The clock struck 5:23 a.m., a time forever etched in the protocol as the moment of her passing. Her death, instantaneous, resulted from a gunshot wound to the head. The revelations of Grace Holland's autopsy, unveiled on September 17, 2020, sent shockwaves through those seeking answers. The report painted a stark picture. Grace had indeed shot herself, the bullet's trajectory deviating from the norm, prompting experts to question the official narrative. Yet, the Holland family contended that the investigation was cursory at best. During a brief exchange with detectives at the crime scene, Robert relayed that Grace, grappling with depression exacerbated by the recent loss of their child to miscarriage, succumbed to despair. Initially, Robert's account seemed plausible, but doubts lingered, casting a shadow over the veracity of his testimony. In the living room, Robert was when Grace emerged from the bedroom, seeking a hug, before retreating back into the room. Then, a gunshot pierced the air. Rushing to investigate, Robert found Grace lying in the bedroom, a gun nearby and blood pooling beneath her head. This account was promptly relayed to the medical examiner at 7:25 a.m. However, the Holland family contested this narrative. They alleged that on that very day, Robert, accompanied by his legal counsel, appeared at the Creve-C police station and offered a divergent version of events. In his new statement, Robert claimed that he and Grace were together in the bedroom. She briefly left and then returned to embrace him, mentioning she had to leave for work. As she leaned in to bid him goodbye, the fatal shot rang out. A press release dated January 31, 2024, delves into the enigmatic disappearance of the interview recording between Robert Dios and a detective from Creve-C. Jeffrey Hartman, the city's police chief, acknowledged the existence of the video interview during the investigation. However, he lamented an error in the department's recording system, resulting in the deletion of the crucial footage. This unfortunate turn of events left a veil of uncertainty shrouding the Creve-C Police Department's inquiry into Grace's untimely demise. On August 4, 2020, Detective Char Parker unveiled intriguing revelations. Parker, while tipping off Robert about the impending police visit for evidence collection, subtly suggested the necessity of emphasizing Grace's depression to shape a narrative that would point to an apparent outcome. Significantly, the police honed in on the contents of Robert's phone during their search. Ultimately, after thorough investigation, the detectives concluded that Grace had taken her own life, as per the forensic medical examination's testimony. However, the Holland family remained steadfast in their pursuit of justice. Convinced of Robert's culpability in Grace's demise, they were resolute in their determination to expose the truth. Opting for an alternative route, Grace's family made the decision to enlist the services of a private investigator for an impartial inquiry. They harbored profound reservations regarding the adequacy of the police investigation. Laura, Grace's grieving sister, vocalized her apprehensions regarding apparent irregularities in the investigation. In an online post, she meticulously outlined the evidence and facts that underpinned their belief that the investigation had veered off course. The Holland family voiced their profound disappointment with the police's handling of the case, alleging a glaring oversight in not considering Robert as a suspect, despite numerous indications pointing to his potential involvement. Moreover, they criticized the investigative team for failing to conduct essential tests, such as examining Grace and Robert's hands for gunpowder residue and analyzing Robert's clothing for further evidence. Adding to their frustration, the Holland family lamented the loss of several critical videos by the Crass Police Department, videos that could have illuminated Robert's role in the tragic incident. They expressed dissatisfaction with what they perceived as the Creve-C Police's bias against Robert, highlighting what they saw as a special treatment afforded to him. Notably, they pointed out Robert's lack of concern for Grace following her death, despite being in close proximity to her. Additionally, the family raised concerns about Robert's connections within the investigation circles. implying potential undue influence on the case's trajectory. They asserted that clear indicators of domestic violence had been disregarded, underscoring their frustration at the lack of response to their calls for a more comprehensive investigation. In 2023, the Holland family took their quest for justice to the courtroom, filing a lawsuit for death by negligence against Robert. They accused him of physical abuse and suggested that his actions either directly caused Grace's death or drove her to take her own life. However, Robert's lawyer staunchly defended his client's innocence, acknowledging certain circumstances but vehemently denying any involvement in Grace's tragic demise. He argued that the family's emotional turmoil might lead them to assign blame where there is none. In December 2023, Officer Hartman from the CVK Police Department sought assistance from the St. Louis County Police Department to reassess the case. The county police agreed, initiating a thorough examination of the details surrounding Grace's death. This renewed investigation gained momentum in January 2024 when police officers visited Robert Dow's residence to provide medical assistance to his new girlfriend, Dr. Sarah Sweeney. While initially classified as a sudden death, the incident remains under investigation, with detectives awaiting the results of a toxicological examination, which could take 4 to 6 weeks to complete. Dr. Sweeney revealed that she battled severe illnesses, including bone disease and allergies, leading to hospitalization in 2021. These conditions posed a risk of fatal anaphylactic shock without immediate treatment. However, Dr. Sweeney always carried an adrenaline shot for emergencies and diligently managed her health, as per her mother. The family opted to await the official autopsy findings before forming any conclusions. In the eyes of the law, Robert Deus remains a suspect, despite the absence of charges in the deaths of Holland and Sweeney. However, the official results of Dr. Sweeney's autopsy could significantly impact the investigation into Grace Holland's case. Following a meticulous reevaluation, the St. Louis County Police discarded the hypothesis that Grace took her own life. The investigation findings were forwarded to the prosecutor's office in early December via the Public Information Department, which subsequently notified Fox News. Presently, the case is classified as death by negligence, though it remains open for potential further action by the prosecutor's office. Chief Jeffrey Hartman of the Creve Court Police affirmed their adherence to the initial conclusion despite lingering doubts and public scrutiny. Nevertheless, the Holland and Sweeney families persist in their quest for closure, eagerly awaiting the autopsy and toxicology results. They are determined to unravel the enigma surrounding Grace Holland's demise, pondering whether it was merely an unfortunate accident or if there lurks something more sinister and obscure beneath the surface of this narrative. As the world heralded 1993 with joy and resolutions, one man in London set an eerie New Year's resolution of his own, a resolution to become a notorious killer. His target? Unsuspecting men in the gay community. But who was Colin Ireland, and what drove him to declare such a harrowing resolution? Why did he choose to transform a symbol of new beginnings into a dark and twisted game of cat and mouse? Hi, my name is James. Welcome to True Crime Case Files. In today's deep dive, we peel back the layers of one of the UK's most calculated serial killers, a man who sought fame through the fear he instilled. We'll uncover the story of how he executed his plan with chilling precision and overshadowed a bustling city's celebratory spirit by a series of gruesome crimes. To understand the mind behind the moniker the Gay Slayer, we must delve into the past of Colin Ireland. Born in 1954 in Dartford, Kent, Ireland's early life was marked by turbulence, upheaval, and poverty. His childhood, spent in an unsettled home, was the first chapter in a life marked by discontent and detachment. Raised by a single mother, Ireland's formative years were a carousel of different men entering and leaving his life. This instability laid the groundwork for a personality that craved control, a trait that would later manifest in the most sinister ways. His parents were unmarried 17-year-olds. His father left soon after his birth, and Ireland didn't know his identity. Due to his mother's money problems, they had to move a number of times. In spite of all the hardships, Ireland had a close relationship with his mother and remembered her as affectionate and benevolent. Ireland said that as a child, he was a thin, lanky little runt, always getting the worst of it from schoolyard bullies. This made Ireland frequently miss school. As a result, he didn't get a proper education and became sad and withdrawn, choosing his few friends among the most unthreatening kids. As a teenager, Ireland found himself entangled with the law. His crimes, though initially petty, hinted at a deeper struggle within, a struggle for identity and a desperate need to assert his significance in a world where he felt invisible. Constantly in trouble of his own making, Ireland was sent to borstals and prisons for theft, robbery, blackmail, and burglary. He ran away to London at 16 and hung out in an amusement arcade with a bad reputation, where young boys were targeted by pedophiles. Ireland was approached by some of them. Besides, one of his jobs was a bouncer on a gay club. That's where his understanding of gay subcultures came from. As Ireland himself described the 70s, I was entering what I call the lost period, common to those who suffer from psychopathy. In between custodial periods, a lot of the 70s were a blur. I spent my time detached and wondering. In 1982, Ireland married Virginia Zammit, who was confined to a wheelchair. His colleague witnessed a pleasant family life when he visited them. They divorced 5 years later after Ireland's adultery. In 1989, he married Janet Young. He was abusive and after 4 months left his wife abruptly when she was away for the weekend, stealing over £10,000 from her account and leaving her completely broke. He moved to Southend-on-Sea, Essex, roughly 60 kilometers east of London, and lived in a hostel there. Later, he moved to his own flat. There, in this flat, Ireland decided to become a serial killer as his New Year's resolution. Drifting through adulthood, Ireland's life was a patchwork of odd jobs and fleeting relationships. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, there was a growing fascination with infamy and a desire to etch his name into criminal history. Ireland immersed himself in the dark world of serial killers. He studied them, not with a sense of horror, but with an analytical eye. What made them tick? How did they elude capture? These were the questions that consumed him. He spent many hours reading about serial killers and learning about geographic profiling, hence deciding to commit his murders far away from his home. A killer usually commits crimes in a certain radius of about 7 miles from his home. That's why Ireland chose London for his crime scene. He also planned to have at least 5 victims, because he had read that a person needs to have such body count to qualify as a serial killer. The year 1993 witnessed a terrifying series of crimes that shook the core of London's LGBTQ+ community. Colin Ireland, a man whose unassuming demeanor masked a sinister agenda, embarked on a calculated campaign of terror, meticulously planning and executing a series of murders with chilling precision. Ireland's hunting ground was the vibrant gay scene of London. He frequented the Coleherne Club, a known gay bar, seeking out his potential victims. Here, amid the pulsing music and crowded dance floor, Ireland would select and study his targets, plotting their fates with cold detachment. Ireland sought men who liked the passive role and S&M, so he could easily restrain them as they believed it was a sexual game. Members of the pub would wear color-coded handkerchiefs to indicate their sexual proclivities. Ireland was posing as a dominant partner. His first victim, Peter Walker, was a 45-year-old choreographer. Ireland met Walker at the Coleherne, and what started as a night of perceived intimacy quickly turned into a nightmare. Walker's body was discovered in his apartment, revealing the horror of Ireland's actions. Bound, gagged, and suffocated by a plastic bag placed over his head, Walker's death was just the beginning of Ireland's gruesome spree. Ireland placed 2 teddy bears in a sexual position on Walker's body and burned some of his pubic hair so he could smell it. While searching the flat, he discovered that Walker was HIV positive. Enraged, Ireland stuffed a condom into Walker's mouth and another one into his nostril. Each crime scene told a story of meticulous planning and ruthless execution. He carried a murder kit, a rope, handcuffs, and a change of clothing. Ireland left little evidence behind, confounding the police and instilling a growing sense of fear within the community. He was methodical, ensuring each scene was thoroughly cleaned, removing any traces that could lead back to him. He also stayed in the flat till morning to avoid suspicion from leaving in the middle of the night. To describe the nights after his murders, Ireland said, "I think that affected me mentally to quite a degree, sitting with his body for 5 to 6 hours, watching him gradually get blotches, go cold. It wasn't something that I could cope with, to be honest." Ireland disposed of all the things he touched by throwing them out of a train window on his way back to Southend. When the police discovered the body, they assumed it was the result of a sexual game gone wrong. 2 months later, Ireland returned to the pub where he met 37-year-old librarian Christopher Dunn, who invited Ireland to his flat. Ireland tied, handcuffed, then beat and tortured his helpless victim before suffocating him by stuffing pieces of cloth into his mouth. After murdering him, Ireland used Dunn's PIN and bank card to withdraw $200 from his account. The police assumed it was an accident as a result of a sex game and didn't link his death to walkers. Ireland was getting more and more confident as his New Year's resolution was coming together. Ireland met 35-year-old businessman Perry Bradley III at the Coleherne pub. He was the son of Texas Democratic Party fundraiser Perry Bradley Jr. In his Kensington flat, Bradley refused to be tied, but Ireland told him that he couldn't perform sexually without it. Bradley reluctantly agreed, and then Ireland told him that he was a thief and he just wanted his money and PIN. After Bradley gave Ireland his PIN, Ireland told him that he should try to fall asleep, as he wouldn't leave his flat till morning. Bradley did fall asleep, and Ireland realized that Bradley could identify him and strangled him. Then he placed a doll on top of the dead man's body. The heinous crimes of Colin Ireland not only sent shockwaves through the communities he targeted, but also captured the relentless gaze of the media. The press dubbed him the Gay Slayer, a moniker that sensationalized his horrific acts and underscored the homophobic undercurrents of the time. Within 3 days, on June 7th, Ireland was back at the Coleherne. He met 33-year-old Andrew Collier, a housing warden, and went to his home. Again, Ireland handcuffed and tied his victim to the bed, demanding his bank details. After killing Collier's cat, Ireland strangled Collier. He placed a condom on Collier's penis and fastened the dead cat's mouth over it, and put the cat's tail into Collier's mouth. On June 15th, Ireland met Maltese chef Emmanuel Spiteri. Aged 41, he cuffed, bound, and strangled his victim, then stayed in his flat watching TV and eating Spiteri's food. After cleaning the scene, Ireland set fire to the flat, but it only caused minor damage. As the body count rose, so did the alarm. The gay community, already marginalized, now found itself in the grip of a predator who walked among them, unseen, unknown, and deadly. But what was the motive behind these abhorrent acts? Was it a deep-seated animosity towards the gay community, or something more cold and calculated? And what were the critical mistakes Ireland made, and how did they lead to his capture? As the death toll rose, London's Metropolitan Police found themselves grappling with a cunning predator. The investigation into Colin Ireland's crimes was a race against time, a complex puzzle that demanded not just diligence, but innovation in the face of a killer who seemed always one step ahead. Initially, the investigation faced significant challenges. Ireland's careful planning and meticulous cleanup at each crime scene left frustratingly few clues. The killer's methodical approach in disguising his identity and movements compounded the difficulty, turning the investigation into a labyrinthine task. Detectives were confronted with a disturbing pattern. All victims were men from the gay community, their bodies discovered in their own homes, a sign of trust, brutally exploited. This realization led to a focused investigation in London's gay scene, particularly around the Coleherne pub where Ireland hunted for his victims. The breakthrough came from meticulous police work and a stroke of luck. A forgotten fingerprint at a crime scene, a chance capture on one of London's first CCTV cameras. These were the pivotal moments that began to unravel Ireland's web of deceit. When Ireland was in Andrew Collier's flat, they heard a noise outside and came up to the window. Ireland gripped a horizontal metal bar across the window and forgot to wipe it off. The police then found these fingerprints. And finally, Ireland was captured on CCTV. Some witnesses said Spiteri left Coleherne with a man. Then police traced his route home. His train journey went through Charing Cross Station, fitted with one of London's first CCTV cameras. Each piece of evidence was a precious key, unlocking parts of a puzzle that Ireland thought he had so carefully hidden. But what was it that finally led to Ireland's downfall? How did the police connect the dots in a case that seemed to defy resolution? The relentless pursuit of justice in the Colin Ireland case turned a crucial corner with a single, seemingly innocuous phone call. Ireland, emboldened by his actions, made a call to the police, taunting them about his crimes. The day after Peter Walker's murder, having heard no news reports of his crime, he anonymously called the Samaritans and the Sun, telling them that he had murdered Walker and locked his dogs in another room. Later, the police received a call from Dunn's killer taunting them because they had failed to link his death to Walker's. In his next anonymous call to the police, he asked, "Are you still interested in the death of Peter Walker? Why have you stopped the investigation? Doesn't the death of a homosexual man mean anything? I will do another. I have always dreamed of doing the perfect murder." After Collier's death, Ireland called Kensington police and said that he had killed 4 men and they had to stop him. He told the police that he had read many books on serial killers and said, "If you don't stop me, it will be one a week." He told the police that he had studied the FBI manual, that is, Whoever Fights Monsters, by ex-FBI agent and serial killer specialist Robert Ressler. "I have got the book," he said. "I know how many you have to do." Ireland later said that the TV crime series, The Bill, had also given him many of his ideas and police evasion methods. Forensic psychologist Professor Michael Brooks said, "Just because you read books about serial killers doesn't mean you have any interest in becoming a serial killer yourself. But if that is your motive, then actually reading books can give you an awareness of the ways in which serial killers have acted in the past." Armed with this new evidence, the police intensified their efforts. A suspect started to take shape from the shadows. It was a breakthrough moment in the investigation, a lead that they desperately needed. On 19th of July, 1993, Ireland went to his solicitor. He said that he was on the CCTV, but that he had not killed Spiteri. He went to his flat for sex, but there was another man. He didn't want a threesome and left. The investigation took a dramatic turn as law enforcement officers matched Ireland's fingerprint to the Collier crime scene. His arrest was a moment of triumph mixed with stark horror as the extent of his crimes came to light. Ireland's overconfidence combined with advanced police work and the critical clues helped bring the killer to justice. The capture of Colin Ireland was more than just the conclusion of a manhunt. It was a moment that brought some semblance of closure to the victims' families and a community shaken by fear. It also opened up vital conversations about the safety of marginalized groups. The trial of Colin Ireland was set to be a gripping chapter in British legal history, raising questions about the nature of evil and the psyche of a man who sought infamy through brutality. What revelations would his trial bring? A legal journey that would reveal the full extent of his chilling crimes was just beginning. The trial was a meticulous dissection of Ireland's actions, each day unraveling more about the man behind the murders. The prosecution presented a case built on a foundation of solid evidence. Ireland, facing overwhelming evidence, made a decision that stunned the courtroom. He confessed to his crimes, detailing them with a cold detachment that sent shivers down the spines of all present. His confession was not just an admission of guilt, but a hair-raising narrative of his calculated and brutal actions. Ironically, pleading guilty to all his murders and confessing, Ireland avoided the publicity he so deeply craved. The heart of the trial, however, lay in the stories of the victims. Their lives, tragically lost, remind us of the human cost of hate and prejudice. Were these 5 murders Ireland's only crimes? Or did he kill others? Serial killers often withhold some of their murders from the police to gain a sense of control over them, even in prison. In January 1993, soon after Ireland's resolution, The police found a dead gay man in his home in Soho. They believed this might have been done by Ireland. However, the gay slayer never claimed this crime. Along with his other victims, a perilous shadow loomed over Hollywood star Tom Cruise. In a chilling twist of fate, Cruise, then at the height of his career and married to Nicole Kidman, narrowly escaped a potentially fatal encounter. According to statements and police files that later surfaced, Ireland had spotted Cruise in a London bar in 1993. Driven by a perilous and misguided belief, Ireland falsely assumed Cruise to be gay and plotted to make him one of his victims. The killer's sinister plan was unexpectedly thwarted. Cruise, possibly sensing something amiss or merely coincidental in his timing, left the bar abruptly, eluding Ireland's grasp. Ireland's conviction was a foregone conclusion, but the sentencing phase was a crucial moment. The judge, in a powerful address, condemned Ireland's actions, emphasizing the gravity and premeditated nature of the crimes. The judge called Ireland exceptionally frightening and dangerous. He said to him, "To take one human life is an outrage. To take 5 is carnage. In my view, it is absolutely clear you should never be released." Ireland was sentenced to 5 counts of life imprisonment for the murders. But the story does not end with Ireland's conviction. There are unconfirmed rumors that Ireland strangled his cellmate, a convicted child killer, in Wakefield Prison, Yorkshire. After that, he was transferred to maximum security lodgings at Whitemoor Prison, Cambridgeshire, into a private cell of his own. His pattern of selecting victims, meticulous planning, and the psychological games played with law enforcement are now studied in criminal psychology courses worldwide. Moreover, the investigation into Ireland's crimes highlighted the importance of community involvement in criminal cases. The breakthroughs in this case were a result of not just police work, but also the cooperation of the community, which had been terrorized by his actions. Ireland's case became a catalyst for discussions about homophobia and hate crimes. It highlighted the urgent need for societal change, not just in policy, but in everyday attitudes and understanding. Ireland died on 21 February 2012 of pulmonary fibrosis and a fractured hip he had suffered earlier. Former prison governor Vanessa Frake, who had crossed paths with numerous hardened criminals, called Ireland the most frightening prisoner she has ever come across. She said, "I don't know what it was about him. He just emanated evil." He was proud of what he did, same as many other serial killers. What drives a man to commit such calculated and brutal acts of violence? To understand Ireland's psyche, we delve into the complex labyrinth of his mind, piecing together a profile that is as disturbing as it is intriguing. Experts who have studied Ireland's case point to a combination of factors. His troubled childhood, marked by instability and lack of a father figure, may have sown the seeds of his later behavior. But it was his deep-seated desire for recognition, a craving to leave a mark on the world, that propelled him into the abyss of serial killing. Ireland's methodical approach to his crimes suggests a high level of intelligence and planning. He studied serial killers, not with repulsion, but with a scholar's interest. He learned from their mistakes, aiming not just to evade capture, but to master the art of killing. Ireland's methodical approach to his crimes offers a chilling glimpse into the mindset of a serial killer. His need for control and recognition, coupled with his ability to blend into society, challenges our understanding of criminal behavior. Forensic psychologists theorize that Ireland's choice of victims from the gay community was strategic rather than personal. He saw them as easy targets, vulnerable due to societal marginalization. This choice reflects not just a cold-blooded strategy, but a chilling indifference to human life. He said about how he chose his victims, "I think it's been something that's been triggered in me some time before. I felt if I was approached, it was likely that I would kill. I thought to myself, if I wasn't approached, something wouldn't have happened. I would have gone on my way and nothing would have happened." Forensic psychologist Professor Michael Brooks explained, "What he does is he reduces the chance of choosing an inappropriate victim or somebody who wasn't going to respond by not selecting those who didn't approach him." Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of Ireland's psychology is his lack of remorse. His confessions were devoid of emotion, his recounting of the crimes clinical. This detachment points to a possible psychopathic personality, where empathy and conscience are alarmingly absent. Detective Inspector Martin Finnegan said, "He was very factual about his acts, as if he was describing someone else's activities. Absolutely no compassion at all. I didn't detect much hatred. It was just matter of fact, like, I went down the shops and bought this, went into the flat and killed him." In most cases, the murderers who kill gay people are gay themselves, and those blatantly homophobic are often secretly gay. Was it really a plausible excuse for Ireland to give in to his secret emotions? Ireland compared the buzz of his first kill to that of losing his virginity. Maybe these hidden feelings brought this simile to his mind. Was Ireland just dishonest with himself and others, trying to hide what he really couldn't control? Ireland said he was heterosexual and didn't touch or have sex with the men he killed. However, it's difficult to imagine that at least 5 people invited him to his flat for sex, undressed, and let Ireland tie them without even a single kiss. Can a person even decide to become a serial killer as a career just for the sake of it, without any ulterior motives, and choose the specifics of his crimes by pure logic? Or is it something deeper? Or was theft the real reason of Ireland's crimes, and murdering his victims was a calculated move to prevent them from identifying him later? There's inconsistency in Ireland's story about the murder of Perry Bradley. He said that he had promised Bradley to leave him alive, but then it occurred to him that Bradley could identify him. This narrative strongly contradicts with his whole intention of choosing his victims for murder to gain fame from becoming a serial killer. Was Ireland just exploiting homophobic moods in the society to mask the mercenary nature of his crimes, hoping that it will win him sympathy of the public and reduce the term of his imprisonment? Or was there more than one reason, perhaps all of them combined? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Share your perspectives and let me know what other cases you'd like me to explore. Until next time.